See who we got. Right, so good evening, everyone. This is episode 14 of the Monolith Watch. That's right. It's Monolith Watch is now the new title of the show. I guess because why not? We got again reoccurring guest. I think I guess he's like the most consistent guest we've got on here at the moment is Rhubba.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone.
And we've actually got a few comments who've come in. So we got British Knight. The third hard drive is immoral. Yes, it is. It's also highly illegal, but we'll get into that in a bit.
Really?
And we got watching the hearing now, a bit behind, but it's pretty crazy. Yes, it is. That has been a wild, what is it? It's like a town hall. It's like those like council things you have here, but I mean, like council sort of public meetings, but in Pennsylvania. But what you had is Rudy Giuliani there with his with the witnesses, which is and this is what probably we'll get onto. But one thing that was fascinating, Rhubba, was that this time he actually presented the affidavit witnesses, the evidence, and also a statistician and a data analysis for military analysis chap to be as well, which sort of adds to the credentials. And they raised the certain counties in Pennsylvania that had the, I guess, irregularities, but also just the outright lies. I mean, you had more people voting in the county who were registered there. I mean, that's like, I don't know what to say from that. I don't know how anyone I like to see how the media is going to spin this. If the winds do change against Biden, because I don't know how you can. I mean, when it comes to this sort of mathematical, facts, you can't spin it any other way. Surely, I just.
Well, did you hear? I mean, there was just breaking news a few minutes ago, but there's going to be an investigation in Nevada.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, let me guess. It's going to be Clark County because that's that's like Las Vegas and around there. It's like heavy Democrat area. So I imagine is it statewide or is it like?
I just saw the article and it came from, I can't remember who it was, but it was a few minutes ago breaking, and it was a blue check mark news agency who said, heavy suspicions of voting irregularities in Nevada. It will be officially investigated. So this is almost hot off the press, and because this is, I think we'll get more into this. I think what has made some of the right give up in this the last 7 days have been crazy, and a lot of the high profile names on the right have kind of chucked in the towel and just said, look, we just don't have the ammunition. What we thought 2 weeks ago, we had all this ammunition, it kind of evaporates in the face of the courts and the official investigation. And now, at this point of it's over, let's throw in the towel, suddenly something more credible in Pennsylvania, and now it looks like in Nevada, has cropped up. It's a roller coaster. Which is why people say to me, why don't I comment more on this? And I'm going, I'm keeping the powder dry, because there's more twists and turns to come.
I mean, this is how I see it. Imagine you're on an 18th century, early 18th century battlefield, and you got all your lines, you got your infantry, and they're ready to meet the opposing army. It would be like ordering your cavalry to start charging into the lines. Because you think, oh well, we've got heavier, heavier form of cavalry. The linesmen on the opposing side, they seem a bit demoralized. We're just going to charge in there. But what happens is, from what I'm seeing on that sort of military analogy, the Democrat cavalry have reached the Republican linesmen, and the Republican linesmen are starting to form squares. and now they're looking quite buggered. From what I can see, it seems that and this is something that I think why a lot of the right has given up, and certain commentators, is because we unfortunately live in this society where you have to have instant information, but also instant results. And when it comes to legal proceedings, because this is one big thing I always told, because I know a few lawyers, and I asked one of them who specialise in UK constitutional law, but also done a bit of US constitutional law as well, is it can drag out for a long, long time. And when you have heavy hitters like Rudy Giuliani, who I know has been ridiculed of late, but he was the man who brought down every mob family in New York. Now, that is a man you cannot underestimate in any stretch of imagination. He's not like some naive hotshot lawyer who knows nothing of the political world. He isn't going to make those rookie mistakes that the media have been suggesting that he has made, and some people on our side have made.
Which possibly Powell is one of those people. I mean, they called her the Kraken, but she kind of faded away because I think she went in with what she thought was very strong ammo, and it turned out, well, where you saw, this stuff wouldn't hold up in court.
Well, I'm waiting with a bated breath. From what I understand, though, Rhubba, I've got breaking news from that as well with Powell. She is filing in about half an hour's time in Georgia. She has reiterated that she is going to be big. This is she said biblical proportions. Given what's been going on in Pennsylvania, given what's been going on in Nevada, and also similar suits happening in Wisconsin, and I think Michigan is also. I've just heard on the grapevine stuff about Michigan, maybe similar thing with Pennsylvania, because there's similar voting irregularities, but also the voting systems in place. From what I can see, either she is lying to everybody, which she must know that she's lying. I just don't. But she's been in the legal profession for about 40 years. She's been like state attorney and everything. I don't know why she would engage in such political, such career suicide if she was bullshitting. And I can't find. I mean, maybe she over-egged it, but again, I'm just looking at the length of time she's been in this legal world, and she spent most of the time in the legal world. She's had very little to do with the political world, only in the last 4 years with the Trump presidency. So I don't know. I mean,
you had that thing though back in the 60s with the JFK assassination. There was the district attorney Jim Garrison who prosecuted, saying there was this conspiracy, what the movie JFK plays down. But Jim Garrison's theory was that there was this gay business community that were out to get that orchestrated the assassination of JFK, and he ruined his career on that case. Of course, years later in the 1990s, it gets made into the Oliver Stone film JFK, and people accept that as reality. But at the time, Garrison staked everything on a lot of innuendo, hearsay, because one of the gay businessmen was in a National Guard unit with Lee Harvey Oswald. That proved that there was collusion. That kind of thing. He really ran with something that didn't hold up in court. And I get the impression. I just feel at this moment, I'll give you another military analogy. So we're talking the first half of the war, the British in North Africa. And I'm using this one because I just watched the 9-hour YouTube video on Operation Crusader by the Tick channel. But the British go into Operation Crusader with these light guns that don't have the range over the Germans. The Germans can shoot the British haven't got the range, and they haven't got the equipment, and they haven't got the firepower that the Germans have, even though there's more British than Germans at that stage. And I feel this is what's happened, you know, that yes, we have to take the fight to the Democrats, because I believe there is voter irregularity. You're always going to get this with postal mail-in voting. And I don't think postal voting has ever been done on a scale as large as this ever anywhere in the world.
No,
and it is. And as we were talking, I think the last time we got together, and Owain was with us, we were saying that rather than orchestrated from the top down, it's probably lots of frontline Democrats, party groups doing things in Pennsylvania, doing things in Wisconsin, doing things in Michigan. And it just all adds up because, you know, they're so deranged. The ends justify the means. And so you've got all these things. And Harrion did that video where he spotted, you know, who are these people putting ballots in bags? Why is this being boarded up? And but this is all good, but will it hold up in court? And I think that's where the firepower issue has been, that yes, you know, we have to fight this fight, but do we have the firepower that will really hit the Dems in a court of law, in an official investigation? And I'm not quite sure we're there. Now, Giuliani and Powell and maybe a few others in this Nevada thing, that may be the arrival of the Sherman tank to try and tip the balance, you know? That might be our kind of Montgomery has shown up with the Sherman tank, and from now on, we're never going to know defeat. But I think we're still in that early part where, is it good enough? Is it going to take it to court and stand up because the Democrats will fight this. They'll fight dirty. They'll use everything they've got. They'll use the media. And, you know, it's got to be strong stuff. It's got to be the Democrats being caught with their hand in the till. And it's got to be that level.
And that's why I think, and this is what my personal tactic is, you need to have somebody, and this would be very difficult to find, but you need somebody who was part of that Democrat local machine where I'm 99% certain that the irregularities were fraud, and I think it was deliberate, and I think it was all orchestrated on the local level in certain counties, which is quite interesting because the counties. Okay, so this is the thing. There are voting trends like we have in the UK between rural and urban constituencies. There are voting trends based on regions of the UK. So like you could, at last general election, the Conservative Party received, I think it was on average, anywhere between 5 plus 10% in constituencies. Labour were down -10, -15, sometimes even -20. The only one that it bucked the trend was Putney, because that went to Labour because, you know, it's London. But what you had in American election was all the urban counties in the states, and this also applies to Senate and congressional as well. Trump was, I think, in the key in those metropolitan counties, he was up, and he was up by a bit. You know, it was ranging from 10% plus. We don't really know the full amount, because what happened was, of course, at a certain time in the morning, they all stopped the counting, and then you had a long period of time, and then they started counting again, and then that's when we had all the mysterious ballots turn up, and then these ridiculous graphs, these graphs and everything, where Biden sort of just, not just naturally in a graph fashion, not like a natural sort of overtaking, just we've all seen that meme of him just going upwards, vertically upwards, and then across. And one thing that was really interesting is Biden was down in all the metro areas, apart from, and get ready for this, Hennepin County, which is Minneapolis, Chicago, Philadelphia, and Atlanta. He was up, and get this, and I know that I just checked Hennepin County to just make sure it was confirmed. It looks like he was up. He from what I can see, he got 25% more votes than Obama did at both at his peak, his peak popularity in 2000. Was it 2008 presidential election? And even in that same county, Trump was still up 13% in Hennepin. So and the thing is, because of the size of these counties, these are the most populated counties in the state. So naturally, this would swing any state. And bearing in mind, you're looking at the margins of places in Georgia and such. I mean, I think it's still like 12,000 votes, which is not that much, all things being considered. Same in Michigan and Pennsylvania. It's quite close. I think Wisconsin is the only one where there's actually quite a lot. But I mean, again, from what I'm seeing as well from certain on the ground, a former state attorney in Wisconsin, he's been saying that the voter fraud there is a lot higher and a lot wider than in the other counties. And he's filing lawsuits. He claims he's got evidence of hundreds of thousands of illegal votes. So we shall see with that. I don't know. I haven't looked into Wisconsin at all, to be honest, but we'll see what happens with the courts there. But at the end of the day, I've never known any election where you could lose votes in pretty much all the other counties in the countries, and then these very certain cities which have a long history of corruption, where attorneys and politicians and legislators and such have been done for corruption on a wide scale, and Biden manages to buck all national trends and get and improve over Obama's performance by about 25%.
I've heard the left's reasoning for this, and
yes.
So their reasoning is that Republican voters. So in the early vote tallies, Republicans seem to be doing well. That's because Republicans like going in person to a polling station to vote, and so it appears, this is not my words, this is theirs. So it appears that Trump is in the lead, but then come the postal ballots, because the Democrat voters are more engaged with postal voting, particularly in this COVID time, and Democrats are more likely to adhere to lockdown and social distancing, so they've decided to mail in their ballots. And so you get these late surges because then all the postal ballots are counted, and they are naturally overwhelmingly in favor of the Democrats. Nothing to see here, ladies and gentlemen. Move along. That's their logic, their line of logic. And yeah. I showed, and this is what I mean about ammunition. So I showed them that spike, the famous graph that showed the spike in votes that went straight up. And so they go there and say, well, that's just because then all the postal ballots, which favor the Democrats, got.
Okay, so that I've had that same thing with leftists as well. And so what you say is, okay, so the entire ballot, because they come in via these ballot boxes. So are you telling me there's a ballot box where all the votes in there, 100%, every single one of them are for Biden? Because that's how because I was watching the results come in. And I'll upload it. I'll put it on Twitter or something later so everyone can see and where I'm referencing this. but I actually saw live on, I think it was Google Live. It was like Google who were doing like a live sort of update where literally it was 138,000 votes came in Michigan. Every single one, when you see like it was 2 million each, and then you see it next to and it just goes, all of it goes to Biden. Biden's up, but Trump's figure, his number, stays the same, 2 million. So and that's the thing I raise with many of them, and usually the response I get is cope, get over it, you've lost, the usual stuff.
I got more of an explanation. I got, oh, well, that district is 100% Democrat, and it has been for about 40 years.
Yeah.
That is one of them. The other one I got, and this is what I call Schrodinger's Google graph, which is that Google is right and to be trusted, and also they're not to be trusted because they're big tech. And these two conflicting things can be held in the same sentence. So I showed them that graph and said, explain that. And they go, where did you get that graph from? Was it from a right-wing site? And so I go back to my source and go, where's that from? And they go, yeah, it was from that right-wing site. I said, I can't use that against this guy. I can't quote Breitbart against people like that. Actually, they're never going to accept that.
The graph originated, I will say this, there's actually, and someone's put it on there, the graph was also released by the state electoral board committee, or the people who do the results in the states, in the certain states, and the graph was in that particular state as well. So if you find that graph and you find it was by the state, just for everyone out there, and people say, oh, was it who you're quoting, a far right site or anything, just say, yeah, the state of Michigan is a far right organization. Yes,
I could have done with you around at that time. All our friends were there going, I think it was from Breitbart. I go, that's not going to help. That's not going to help.
I mean, this is the thing with Breitbart. It's always good to cite Breitbart, but cite the source. Go to the sources that Breitbart use, and then go to their sources. And then if it's like because this thing, ideally, you need to basically reference like state bodies that are like controlled by the Democrats, like Michigan is, because I use that one, and that's a good shutter up, because you can't really say that the Democrats in Michigan are far right, unless you're a rampant like communist or something. Probably from their perspective they would be far right, but you can't do anything. I now offer the mercy and just put in the chat here I think he's referencing 2004 council elections, where unfortunately in this country we suffered the same sort of postal vote fraud on I wouldn't say mass scale, but for a community, for like a local level, it was quite a big scale operation. It was basically a factory of ballot harvesting, I guess you'd call it. And this is the fascinating thing. You had like these young. This is in Birmingham, by the way, where you had these little children would run round up and down streets, and they would basically yank out of people's letterboxes and such their postal votes and take them. You also had men going round as well and confronting postmen and such, and basically threatening them to hand over ballots. And this was all proven in court and everything. And then you had, on the election night, you suddenly had a similar thing where it was Labour were doing quite well, and the Conservatives were doing quite well, and the Lib Dems were doing quite well, and then suddenly Labour ended up doing very, very well. In fact, they did so well, I think they actually managed to beat all previous records. And just to give a bit of backstory for people who either weren't sort of aware at the time, because we got a lot of children watching this show, so they probably wouldn't have been around really, but this was on the backdrop of the Second Gulf War in Iraq, and Birmingham, being a heavy Asian and Muslim city, result this, and so there was a lot of anger within the Muslim community who, on large, even then, would vote Labour. And there was a big fear from the Labour Party that because of the Iraq War and everything and what was going on down there, that they would sort of leave the Labour Party in droves. So you had that as well, as the backdrop for it. But ultimately they were found out. I believe several went to prison for it. It was quite big from what I remember. And the judge, he sort of there's an old article you can find on the BBC about it, actually, like an archive article, and he absolutely went into the Labour Party. He just he basically he went as close to saying that he believed that it was deliberately orchestrated by the Labour Party. It just couldn't be proved, but he definitely went into the local Labour Party, and he just absolutely railed against them, and I believe the results and everything, all those illegal ballots were chucked out. So yeah, that's our version. But we're very lucky in the United Kingdom here, because we have very and this is the thing, we don't have like with our local institutions, they're not that heavily politicized like they are in the United States. So like when you have like Democrat judges and Democrat legislators and Republican judges, we don't have that here. I mean, the idea is that what we have is they're meant to be apolitical, and then there are systems in place to prevent political decisions from taking place. And so that's why we don't have that sort of problem here. However, I do see the postal votes in the future here in the UK becoming a potential problem. In that I'm seeing a lot of Labour people who have, especially likes of Dawn Butler and such, who are basically saying, "Oh, the postal voting system in America is wonderful, isn't it so wonderful?" And I'm just looking at it thinking, "Oh God, I can see Labour's managed to find their next import idea from the United States."
Well, that's just it. I mean, we've the left in this country just look to the American left, for inspiration, ideas, and that's why we get all this ghastly stuff directly transplanted over that just doesn't fit in this country. Fortunately, and I will stick up for the British normie on this one. Fortunately, the British normie won't swallow a lot of this American imported politics. Just won't. So take the knee. Nah. No, the British normie's not having that. Tear down the statues. Decolonize the curriculum. Nah, they're not having it.
No. And I mean, we saw that. I mean, I think one of the things that I think radicalized the British normie was the statues, and it was especially the Baden-Powell statue. I mean, you basically had like the normies revolt, sort of. I mean, and that was the one time I actually saw conservatives, like local party conservatives and local council, because the Conservative Party leader was about to take it to the mob, and you had basically conservative councillors going there saying, "Don't you fucking dare! If you fucking do this, you're done." And that was the only time I've seen on a local level from the Conservative Party the strongest sort of revolt and backbone. And it'd be nice to see some more on that. I think what's so tiring at the moment is that there's quite a few people on the right who you end up having to fight to get through, if that makes sense. It's like when you're fighting, it's like fighting on two fronts, and it's like you don't have to fight on two fronts. We need to fight on one front, because if we fight on two fronts, then our forces are sort of stretched out too thin.
The last fortnight, the right I can't really say so much in America, but certainly the UK right has just fragmented. We have shattered into at least a dozen pieces. And which is why I spent this week on Twitter just saying, everybody calm down, take a step back, because we cannot do this. We cannot have the kind of I've seen some very wild stuff among the online right, and we'll get to that. We'll talk about the dissident right sometime this evening. But at the moment, I'm thinking, okay, we are divided on. There is division on lockdown, no lockdown, COVID restrictions, COVID liberty. Okay, we're very divided on that. But let's look around, find one or two things we can unite most of the right on. And I think the statues and the memorials and the history is something we can just get everybody, all the different factions, just sort of going, okay, we're agreed on this. And we can work together on that. And then from there, we can expand, perhaps reforge the alliance. I believe we had an alliance of centrists and the right and libertarians 4 years ago. And it's and people, there are some of the like the really aggressive dissident right said there was never an alliance. And I go, but you're on a live stream, you, a libertarian, were on the same live stream as Sargon of Akkad, who at that time was a slightly left-leaning centrist. What do you mean there wasn't an alliance? Don't gaslight me on this one.
Yeah, I mean, of course there was an alliance, and the alliance. I mean, heck, I remember because I lived through it. The alliance. Brexit was the unifying force because it drew me into. Like I didn't really know much about libertarians or the classical liberals or anything like that. It definitely changed my perspective on them. It definitely. During Brexit, I ended up campaigning alongside a communist, a member of the British Communist Party, and I agreed with them on the concepts of national sovereignty, and everything else like that.
You see, that was the thing. We came together on that, and most people came together on free speech issues. And I just think now statues, memorials, place names, and history is something that's a unifying force in the way that Brexit was. That, with Brexit kind of mostly there, as it were. Now we're into the trade deal phase. But the actual the legal process of leaving the EU has happened. So we need something else. And I think that the heritage side is something that can pull us back together again. And then once we're back together again and talking, we can then find other areas of common ground and then start working. There's so much work to be done. You can find so much common cause against the left, but we got to learn how to work with each other again, as we did over Brexit. And with Sargon's a case of somebody who was and a couple of others. They were kind of slightly to the left leaning centrists, and we've worked on Sargon, so now that he's slightly to the right leaning, he's almost a conservative now.
I think on the graph he probably would be. He's definitely on the right. He sort of moved upwards to the top right corner. I think one of the problems that I think what made it our alliance and why we were so able to unify so quickly, and while the opposition, like you're talking about your neocons, your neoliberals in the UK, your Blairites, Fabians, and Greens, and your Metropolitanites and all that sort of stuff on that side, they were able to unite really quickly as well on the Remain side. And I do think that there was an element between that the 20th century agreed sort of division of what the political structures and the political system, left and right. I think that in 2016, I think it collapsed, and I think it collapsed in quite a spectacular way, because I think what you had for a brief period at least was you had the global the globalists, which I don't like to use the word, but do people know what I mean when I say globalists?
Yeah.
The people who are anywheres but not the people who belong to anywhere, not a certain nation flag. That's those sorts of people, Lib Dems, if you will. And then you had the populists, and I know in the UK, populist is a dirty, horrible term, which is a shame because it has it can have a good positive connotation, because you end up delivering the popular demand, not the demand of big business, media, that sort of stuff. You end up delivering popular demand from your constituents. So I think the dividing line is still between the globalists and, I will say, the localists, people who want more localism, whether it's on a national level or just on a regional level, like local level. And I think I think in Britain that is the dividing line. I think it's also why there's been a massive push from people on the right who are now hating Boris. Is because he is, for all intents and purposes, looking more like a globalist than a populist, and I think there are a lot of people on the right who were expecting him to be the sort of national populist conservative figure. I remember saying this right back along, and it's actually in the Observer, one of the articles there. I remember saying that I don't hold out much hopes for beyond Brexit when it comes to Boris, because he's a liberal, like he's a conservative liberal or liberal conservative or whatever, and a centrist. I mean, I know that there's like the whole Britain Trump thing. I knew that wasn't going to be the case at all with Boris in particular. To be honest, I've actually been looking at Nathan Wood's been sharing stuff about the educational reform by Michael Gove, and how he's managed to sort of defang the left in some aspects of education. So I'm thinking
it was the best portfolio he ever had.
Yeah, I mean, I'm starting to think maybe Michael Gove maybe he should be prime minister, because he seems like he's got he may be Machiavellian, and he might be.
Nothing wrong with a bit of Machiavellian.
But I think I think when you have an opposition who is pulling all this, borderline illegal, cheaty sort of underhand tactics that are coming from the left and the globalist sort of left, I think you need to have that same sort of, you need to have somebody who is Machiavellian and who will put, who will take that risk to win. And also, I mean, I think Gove, I think he's awake on a lot of issues. I think he knows. I think he knows the media's full of shit half the time. I noticed that on several occasions he does like with Beth Rigby and Kay Burley. He's done a few like smirks where he sort of gives them like a very looks at them in a sort of contemptuous way. And so, I mean, I think I don't know. I just see the problem with the left and right at the moment is that society has sort of wants and maybe the media, I don't know who, but it seems like there's been an attempt to move us back to the old sort of concepts of left and right, but in reality those terms have been broken, and in reality it's the right is more populist, and the left is sort of the globalist thing. And we see this in America. I mean, if you look at I don't know the GOP technically exists anymore. I think the GOP is Trump now. I think the GOP members are the MAGA members, and I think when it comes to whatever happens, and I think the reason why, I mean, I think in normal circumstances, I think the GOP and some members of the GOP probably would have chucked Trump to the side by now. But Trump's been very clever, because when he took over, he cultivated his own followers to enter the party, like sort of like real like professional entryism. And what he's been achieved to do is he got now senators, congressmen, new ones who are Trumpian in nature. But what you've got now is, you got the rhinos, I guess what they call them over there, like the wets, yes, or something. Though I'm told that actually the rhinos are actually worse than the Tory wets in some cases. John
Kasich is their poster boy for the rhinos, and it's interesting because I see three factions in the GOP. So you've got these rhinos, you've got the John Kasich types. I'm trying to think of any others off the top of my head. Mitt Romney is another one.
Yeah, he's like the king rhino. I think for many, he's seen like as like the head, but that's because he's like the most. He sort of he took over the mantle from McCain when it comes to never Trumpers, because again the rhinos are never Trumpers.
I see the decline and fall of John McCain. Yes, but 8 years ago, Mitt Romney was Hitler, literally Hitler, according to the Democrats.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, he was literally Hitler, and
he's a Mormon.
Boris had him and Boris. We forget, but him and Boris had a proper spat over social media back then, over the Olympics, because he said, "Oh, I don't think Britain's ready," and then like Boris says, "Oh, you don't know what you're talking about, mate," and so you had a proper spat over Twitter and everything. And I think Romney did apologize and said, "I don't mean any offense." But then Boris went on to ridicule him at the stage at at the Olympics and everything.
I mean, that was kind of peak Boris, and I think he trades off a lot of the Olympics, his time as London mayor. There's a lot of trading on that reputation. But the tanks are going to run dry very soon, if they haven't run dry already. But yes, going back. So you have the rhino faction of the Republicans. You have the kind of Trumpians, like, I can't remember her name, but she's a senator from Colorado who came to a meeting packing firepower.
Yeah.
And then you've got what I call the canny Republicans, and I put Ted Cruz and Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell, which is the ones where they go, particularly with Cruz, like Trump was very rude to Cruz in the election campaign.
Very rude. Of being the Zodiac killer, and then they accused like father of JFK.
The whole thing about the Zodiac killer thing, they happened 1 year before Cruz was born, but I love the response to that. That's how scheming he is. But the thing about Ted Cruz and Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell is that they say, okay, there's Trump, and we know all the problems with Trump, but they are clever enough to know the bigger problem is the Democrats, particularly a radical Democrat platform, and they know they have to hitch themselves not just to Trump, to the Trump brand, to the MAGA brand. They're canny enough to know they've got to run with that MAGA brand. If Trump may not. And I know I get accused of that's defeatist talk, but I'm just saying, okay, hear me out here. What if he doesn't, that Biden gets confirmed? Right. The Trump brand and MAGA has to keep going. And those guys I see as almost kind of like keepers of the flame. I love Ted Cruz in kind of Senate inquiries. He's just brilliant. He's just, when he's taking on big tech in the Senate inquiry, he's like a laser. And there's Lindsey Graham, who was the milquetoast conservative, and yet he found his cojones in the last 4 years, and so I see that as a kind of, that's a good core to base the Republican Party around. But you can sense that there's going to be forces that's going to try and big up the rhinos, try and say, well, that has to be the future, and you see the Jennifer Rubins getting on CNN or MSNBC sort of calling for that.
Yeah, and that's where I mean, when it comes to the what if, like, let's just say that Biden does become the next president.
This is all theoretical, fans.
This is all theoretical, because I don't think it's going to happen. Personally, of what I've seen today, anyway, I just don't think it's going to happen. It may be cope, but I just don't think it's going to happen. If it does happen, though, it would. I mean, I would hate to think what would happen to America, because all I can see is violence. Because you would have at least half the country thinking that the president is not legitimate, but also he rigged the vote in huge numbers, and got away with it. That's what half would think, and that's what we. Because this is the funny thing. Have you seen the late one of CBS's poll yesterday, Rhubba?
I didn't see that one.
Okay, so you're going to love this one. 94% of Trump voters think that Biden think that the election was rigged, and that Biden rigged the election. 33% of Biden voters think that Biden rigged the election.
Wow.
So even Democrats think that the election was rigged. And I think, and there's actually a good reason, because people said, okay, well, this sounds like a really ridiculous poll. Why is it? And this is the thing. And one thing that we haven't talked about is what's going on in, it might reference Labour Party in this, but the Democrats have actually, if you look at it from another perspective, they've had one of the worst electoral defeats in recent history. Now let's look at congressional races and senatorial races. They failed to get the Senate, which was their main goal, but the House, the Congress, which is their safe area, we would think so. Last time I checked, they are down 15 seats. Republicans are up 15, and the Republicans have made inroads into California, into Greater Los Angeles. They made inroads into Colorado, which was perceived to be a safe Democrat district there. I think it's the newly elected one that you referenced earlier. You also have Republican gains in Michigan, in Wisconsin, and places like that, where you had, on I think one occasion, there was an error, quote unquote error, in the counting, and the Republican chap believed that he lost until he got a phone call saying, actually no, you won, and after he conceded. So in reality, the Democrats have had a pretty big thrashing, and this is the other important point. The seats that the Democrats lost, the people in those seats were the left of the party. They weren't the moderates, they were the left. And what you got now is a situation where Nancy Pelosi isn't going to be elected speaker, because the moderates hate the sort of blue dogs who are like the quote unquote conservative Democrats, plus the moderates dislike her. You got the Democratic Socialists, the AOC wing, who are blaming the moderates and the blue dogs for all these losses in the House and the Senate. And then you got the moderates saying no. There was one moderate Democrat, I think in Pennsylvania, who said we went round knocking on doors and such, and and we said which party we belonged to, and people on the door said, oh, you're the one who sort of defund the police, you want to you want to introduce socialism, you want to do this, you want to do that, and and she just said these radical policies, and then along with the Green New Deal and everything, these radical policies did not hit home with the voters they met on the doorstep, which sounds very familiar if you think about it to what happened in the election nearly this time last year.
Yeah, exactly, and you just see that. I think it was if we take the votes at face value in on the presidential side, you might have a Democrat in the White House, but in Congress, it looked like it looks like there was the voters have rejected the radical Democrat platform. So a way for people who are the mainstream right to get through the next 4 years is to have a hamstrung Democrat president.
Potentially, but the problem is one of the problem, and this is where I think that one of the problems is I don't know which one's worse. Is it the radical left or is it the neolibs, the neocons? And the question is, who are the people? Which faction were the ones that rigged the vote? Because we haven't even really determined like which side was it. I know many people think it would be Democratic Socialists, the AOCs, the sort of radical left, but at the same time, I don't think they've got the brain power to pull something like this off without being caught. I'm just saying, I don't think they've got the I mean, could you imagine AOC pulling off anything like this, or Ilhan Omar on a national scale? Not I know I know that there's been claims of on a local level, but local and national is quite different. On a national scale, I don't know, or statewide scale, I should say, could this be pulled off? Because at the same time, and I think one of the guests we had on here, Turnip Merchant, pointed out to me was that by this time in 2024, how do we know that states like Texas and then his state, like in Oklahoma, aren't going to flip blue suddenly? Because at the same time, you would be giving an illegitimate president the executive powers, and then he would fill the courts and everything. So there's a part of me that actually goes to the thought process where you find you could wait 4 more years, but at the same time, I think if then that could just be 4 slow years of death of liberty, but also the death of ever having a Republican president again. Because if they can't sort this out, you're never going to have a Republican president again. You're going to have a situation where all these states are going to be flipping blue until Alabama flips blue. And one thing I do think is even if Trump does concede after this, and he admits that and he says, I don't think I can continue anything as a hypothetical. I don't think that's going to happen, though. Let me make that clear to everybody. Even if he does, depending on how it happens, I think if there's any hint of a GOP betrayal, I think his base will walk. And if his base is, let's be generous and say 40%, which is what like the low estimates are, then that is a problem for the GOP, because I mean you would then have like a situation with like Teddy Roosevelt, where he was a very popular figure within the GOP. He lost. He then came back. He didn't get the nomination, and then he just said, "Well, fine. I'm going to create the Progressive Party, and I'm just going to," and then all these GOP members will just join me, and some of them did. And then you had the situation where the vote was split, and then the Democrat and Woodrow Wilson got in again in 1912. And so,
I think the GOP. It all depends how they handle. They handle what happens after the Electoral College. And again, speaking theoretically, so if the GOP, if Biden is confirmed president, if the GOP or too many of the GOP are seen to welcome him with open arms, then the GOP is finished. Okay, there will be a walk. There'll be something else going on. If they acknowledge him with gritted teeth, but then sort of come out fighting, saying, well, we're going to hold him to account. You are not going to muck about with the Constitution. You are not going to muck about with this. We still want investigate. If the GOP comes out in kind of in defiant mode, prepared to tackle him over, okay, we still want an investigation into the voting irregularities. You are not going to muck about with the First and Second Amendments. You are not going to pack the courts. The GOP come out fighting, they've got a chance.
Yeah.
If they cave in and just say, okay, well, now we can have sensible government again, and we look forward to working with that, then the voters are just going to say no. Because here's the thing, the mainstream right just doesn't go away. And what we've seen in this country is that the membership of the mainstream right changes. So 20 years ago, it would have been, a lot of white collar professional people gone to university, gone to a good school, and they would naturally walk into the Conservative Party. And that's no longer the case. 20 years later, you may find a working class person from the North embracing the Conservative Party and the white collar person going off in the Lib Dem Labour direction. So, but there is still that inherent desire that more liberty, less state intervention, more traditionalism, less radicalism. That is always persistent. It's persistent in the American character, and I think it's persistent in the British character.
I think so. But I, at the same time, I mean, I'm just looking, because the problem is, unlike previous time, we've got the internet, and there's a lot of information, there's a lot of stuff on the internet, and a lot of stuff on social media, and you got a lot of people viewing, a lot of Trump supporters viewing all this content about the voter fraud and everything, and a lot of them, and this is something which may be unhealthy, I don't know, but a lot of them genuinely believe that Trump's going to win. He's going to win this. And I think he could. I don't know. I don't know what can happen. I'm at this stage. Yesterday I was getting a bit black-pilled on all of it. Today, after seeing the recent stuff with what you just said in Nevada, which I've just had to look at as well, stuff in Pennsylvania. Apparently, a judge in Pennsylvania has actually blocked the certification process. And she's. I mean, I don't know which party she belongs to. If she's like a Republican appointed or Democrat appointed, but she's blocked it, and she quite clearly sort of, in her reasoning, she basically stated that the irregularities are too great to be, and that because there's an investigation that will now go ahead, she can't certify it, to giving the level of uncertainty with that. So Nevada and Pennsylvania looks like there's stuff going on there, which is positive moves for the Trump campaign, at least. I think though, I mean, one thing that I think America's closest to civil war than it has been since the last one. I think it's close to, and I don't think it'd be like civil war, like states versus states. I think it would be more cities versus sort of rural metropolitan areas. I think there will be a great deal of violence, and the problem is, you got all these, I don't know if you've seen like Alyssa Milano and all these other celebrities saying, "Oh, Olive Branch time Republicans, we need you now. And Trump supporters, we need you to come together and everything." And I'm just seeing, and like, I mean, I joined in with it as well. I'm guilty of joining in with it, but you just had basically the Trump people saying, "No, fuck off. You're the guys who tried to destroy us and called us literal Nazis for 4 years. I'm not talking to you."
My response was, okay, what are you offering?
Yeah, basically.
And yeah, go on. I mean, I want to see a sign of good intention from you first, seeing that you are the ones that frothed and wanted us all locked up, still want us all locked up. But come on, what are you offering? So you can keep your guns would be a good start.
Drop the critical race. I would say, keep drop critical race theory, and also drop. I was just trying to think. Critical race theory. Drop the Green New Deal, and then we can talk.
Yes.
Anything else above that? No, not interested.
Yeah, that's a good top three. And see, but yeah, it's just empty words. There was an excellent. This about 3 weeks ago. There was an excellent Ben Shapiro show where he kind of pulled apart Biden's speech about time for healing and coming together. Whereby the Democrats are going, be part of the healing. Why aren't you part of the healing? Yeah, I thoroughly recommend that one. But the Daily Wire is weird because they put stuff up for 48 hours and they take it down because I think they're hiding more and more stuff behind the paywall before the inevitable axe falls on them.
I mean, one thing I will say is, again, if Biden does become president, you're going to have he's going to do executive orders to quell quote unquote hate speech online. You're going to have I mean, they're sort of playing out taxes on guns and everything. I mean, even if he was in power to do all this, I mean, there would be you'd have to have the Republicans to oppose it, to fight it, to overrule him. He'd be like, in many ways, he'd be like Trump. He'd be chucking out so many executive orders. The Republicans would be there to just take him back through the Supreme Court.
Wasn't Trump the guy who was doing tearing up executive orders? So he overturns a lot of Obama's stuff. Saying, if you want this to be law, it has to go through Congress.
Yeah, he did it with. Yeah, he did. But the trouble is, after the midterms in 2018, he then started doing a few executive orders here and there because he lost his majority in the, I think it was Senate and Congress. People forget when he first was elected in 2016, he had all three branches of government, which is quite rare for a Republican as well. And again, maybe hindsight with when he was back then, because and this is my criticism of the Donald a bit, and this is my criticism. A lot of the Republicans in and around him, and I think him himself, knew about the deep-rooted corruption in these Democrat cities, and it's a shame that it couldn't have been sorted out back then. Having said that, though, I didn't expect, and I don't think they expected, the level of fraud and the level of rigging that would go on. That in some statistical ways, it actually surpasses the vote riggings that go on in places like the Russian Federation and Syria. Like quite, I think it's like 5% more, like sort of in accuracy rate. So I don't think anyone prepared for that. I mean, Rob, where do you think internationally that people looking at the United States politics internationally, do you think by and large that they like world leaders such, do you think they know that the vote was rigged, that Biden's miracle victory in these miracle counties, in these miracle states, because I'm just thinking to myself, like the Macron, he's basically said, oh, we're going to now have postal voting after the fact the French historically were dead opposed to postal voting because of the issue of fraud, because they take their republic and their Republican constitution very seriously. And they've had problems with fraud in the past, and so that they always thought postal voting, like with much of the European continent, was a tool that could be used to rig elections. And I just think to myself, I think, like when it comes to like Biden, when he was talking about Northern Ireland, my response would be, well, you fuck off. You're an illegitimate president. I don't care what you think or what you say.
What I think is it's hard to gauge. I think this whole thing, if we're going to switch to postal voting, it breaks down approximately on over the political divide. So I think COVID is being used as an excuse by those parties that lean to the left as a way, we need more postal voting. I still think those parties that are still nominally to the right are a bit more traditional about voting systems and are cautious about promoting postal voting. It's hard to tell. That the French political system I find easier to understand than any of the other European ones, because with all the plethora of parties that they have under proportional representation, I find European politics kind of blurs into one. I couldn't if I look at Germany, I can't tell you what most of the German political parties stand for. And I've read their Wikipedia pages, and I just go, well, you're one shade of kind of centre left, and there are these people who are supposed to be Christian Democrats, but you're centre left as well. You're all centre, and it's just the whole European. So I don't know where they stand on this. I think I have a great barometer actually for where what the normie thinks, and that is the parents of my children's school and my cleaner. We have a cleaner come around once a week, and she's the normie. And she just goes, this mask wearing thing is nonsense. And she goes, Biden, he sniffs little girls' hair. That's creepy. And I believe he rigged the election. And if she's saying that, I know that's the kind of underlying sentiment of a huge section of the public. And
it's the trouble is a lot of the fringe. One thing that I noticed, and correct me if I'm wrong, anyone, but I've noticed, especially with my, I guess, normie work colleagues who are, men and women in their 30s, 40s, who aren't political, who spend, who probably don't do Twitter too often, but are active on Facebook. And one thing I've noticed is a lot of the stuff on the right filters to Facebook better than anything on the left does. Because after the election, they were talking, they're just, in the sort of breakout room, we were talking about it, and somebody said, I remember seeing that post, that Biden's lot, they stole the election. There was like one, and he actually said one county got more people voted that actually lived there. And so that's something that I noticed, and I was thinking to myself, internationally, that's quite damaging, because then he's going to be known in the time that he is a president who, he's not going to have a honeymoon. If he is president, that is, he's not going to have a honeymoon period. He's not going to have a particularly good time, and there's always going to be that overarching thing of legitimacy, that he is president, because he's going to be marred in corruption. He's going to be marred in all sorts. But the only thing is, it'd be interesting to see how the media now behaves if he is president. That is, what the media is going to be like, because you're going to, are they going to remain the cheerleaders for him? Are they going to come after him? When's he going to drop down dead and then Kamala Harris take over?
Well, here's how I think it will play with the normies, and I've got to think about how it's going to play with the media. So with the normies, so already Biden comes in, he's hamstrung by the fact that he's a reaction against the president rather than actually standing for anything. Nobody can pin well, what's Biden's vision? Well, it's kind of meek Obama stuff, but Obama always had that thing that he was the first black president, and he his symbolic value far outweighed anything that Obama ever really stood for, and Biden stands for even less. He's the stuff with Hunter Biden and his family overall, his odd habits, the fact that he's going senile. This is going to hamstring him from day one, and I don't think he will not be. If he doesn't bring American cities under control, if he doesn't impose law and order on American cities, if he launches America into a foreign military adventure, the public's just not going to put up with him. And I mean the mainstream public. I'm not talking about the kind of wacko coastal elites. I'm talking about the vast swathe. And I think that will cut across the Western world as well. I think people are just not going to stomach his presidency if he gets himself mired in foreign military ventures and doesn't impose law and order. How the media is going to treat him, they are going to try and give him a honeymoon period. They're certainly going to try. But I think, whereas the left-leaning mainstream media, particularly in America, were kind of united against Trump and would work campaign ceaselessly, with that out of the way, you're going to see fissures and fractures. And I can see there's the first to fall away is the guy who I think is whose journalistic integrity is always on the line. He could go one way, he could go the other, and that's Jake Tapper. Because Tapper will call out the excesses of the left occasionally. And you just go, you're almost there, Jake. You're almost there. And then sometimes he will fall back into the mainstream narrative. But I can see him being the first to sort of snap out of it and go, no. And if he snaps out of it, there are others who, the Steltzers and the Don Lemons are just totally on board with anything the Democrats say and do. But there will be one or two and I think Tapper's one of them, that will just break out and just go no, and then you'll start getting dividing lines, and Tucker Carlson won't have to lift a finger to make this happen. So I can see that happening in much in the way that we've seen the last 4 years. We've seen Bill Maher sort of pinging around the media. What's Bill going to do today? Is he going to say this cancel culture is crazy, or is he going to just fall in line? And I can see that happening in the media in general, because there's no existential figure like Trump to unite them all. No, there won't be that.
One thing I've noticed, and again, again, this election has highlighted for me as well, like some journalists who I thought were sound, and which publications I thought were sound as well, like The Spectator. I watched their podcast throughout, and one thing that I thought, which was really bizarre, and this is something I still struggle to wrap my head around, is they were very critical of Black Lives Matter, the race riots, critical race theory. They even sort of delved into that. Katie Andrews and such, they sort of talked about wokeism. And then suddenly they just all decided to back Biden.
Did I mention this in the last show we did? I think I might have mentioned it in conversation with the Britisher, actually.
Yeah, I think you might mention his I don't think you... Yeah. So what's your theory with that?
Well, okay. So Andrew Neil. Okay, so he's the figurehead, really. I mean, I know Fraser Nelson's the editor, but Andrew Neil is kind of like the editor emeritus, perhaps. He's that kind of elder statesman figure on The Spectator.
Yeah. And
here's the thing: for all of Andrew Neil's great qualities, an absolute terrier of an interviewer who does his research, who asks the telling questions and won't put up with any nonsense. Andrew Neil only really understands British politics. I don't think he's ever he thinks he knows American politics and American culture. I still think most of it baffles him. And what happens is that he has an image in his mind, and I think this is shared by Fraser Nelson and also what's her name, who just is completely Fruit Loopy about her support of Biden. Is it Deborah?
Katie Andrews.
Oh, Kate Andrews. Kate Andrews.
Well, I think she's a leftist, and I'll tell you why in a bit why I think she's a leftist. And I've noticed throughout consistently elections, she always supports like the neo-lib Democrat. Like she doesn't even support a rhino, which is pretty like even like you. I mean, if she supported like a rhino Republican once here and there and such, I might say okay, yeah, maybe fair enough. But no, she always supports Democrat, and she claimed to be like a figure within the Tea Party movement back in the 2000s. I'm just thinking to myself, bullshit, absolute bullshit. I do not believe it. I can't even find any references to her in the Tea Party. It says that she was in the Tea Party, but it's like, okay, fine, but have you got any photos of yourself in the Tea Party? Have you got any? Did you do anything when you were in the Tea Party? It's like,
But I think with Andrew Neil, he doesn't get a lot. He doesn't get the Second Amendment really. He doesn't get so much of American politics. So what happens here? He's looking for a kind of genteel president. He has a checklist in his mind of what an American president should be. So he's got this kind of JFK, Reagan, Clinton image circulating around. I mean, he'd like his presidents to be kind of capitalist, leaning towards the free market, less state intervention. But he is always, and this is a word that he uses a lot when he's describing American presidents, and that is statesman-like.
Yeah.
He's always looking, and he could not see that in Trump at all. He could not see someone who was statesman-like. And I'm just trying to think who would have been in the Republican Party who Neil would have backed back in 2016. Possibly Rubio. So he's looking for, he wouldn't, not Kasich, because he's actually said that Kasich was a waste of a candidate back in 2016.
Yeah. I think what I've annoyed about Andrew is, and I think this is where his own egos come into play here, because from what I understand from some people, he has a massive ego, and he's quite easy stuck in his own way on many things. And a lot of people, myself included, were pointing out to him of late the electoral irregularities, which I didn't even use the word fraud because I know that there is quite a loaded term and heavy proof is needed. So I just said, okay, so explain to me why this county more people voted here than who actually live here or who are registered here. Why is it that Biden managed to get 25% more in these counties, but not in these counties than Obama? Why is it that it's been proven that in this county 189 dead people voted? I mean, just that today, and why that certain congressional seats flipped back after a recount audit was done. And that sort of stuff, because he was going on like, oh, there's no voter fraud, there's no, every single vote 100% accurate, pretty much. But what he would do is when you present him with links or quotes or anything of substantial content in a tweet, he would ignore you. But he would pick out the somebody who, I wouldn't say like an idiot or low information, but somebody who wasn't, I guess, well equipped, who was someone who he can see as weaker than him in the sort of Twitter debate, debating, and he would sort of retweet them and say, "Oh, you silly person! There is no evidence and everything." And so I think where he has failed as a journalist is he's allowed his own ego to get in the way of the truth, because it means now that he would have to basically walk back everything he said and admit he's wrong. And I've met a lot of journalists, like BBC, ITV, and they are very self-obsessed, and they can never do any wrong. And so I think basically, Andrew sort of went along with the because I remember watching election night, and I remember him literally right before all these ridiculous votes started coming in for Biden, these rigged votes, when Trump was winning, he won Florida, he won Ohio, he was Virginia, which no one talks about, rather. But did you know Virginia was called at 2% votes counting for the Democrats for Biden, and then this is by like the various media outlets in America, and then CNN and others had to basically revert their count and say that actually Trump is outperforming in Virginia. And I was thinking, oh shit, he's gonna flip Virginia to the Republicans again. And I remember on the BBC World coverage, he had like this Democrat, everyone, and said basically he was like, and he ended up saying to her, well, "What's happened to you? You got all the Hispanics and the African Americans. They've abandoned you. They're all voting for Trump now. It's terrible. You're having Trump's increasing his vote here and increasing his vote here, and it's absolutely terrible for you." And he really ripped into her, and she was like a bit of deer in the headlights, because they don't really have like in American media anyway. The Democrats don't usually have somebody who goes after them in such a rough way. But when it comes to presenters who interview them, but obviously, situation changed, and I guess Andrew Neil went with the sort of established line, because I guess as you said, he doesn't know much about American politics. I think he's well versed in British and European. He doesn't really know much about it. So he just went along with what was being said by people.
To be fair to the Spectator, it has I think it truly is a diverse publication. To an extent, I mean, it would never invite Kahindi Andrews to write an article for it. But you got to remember, it is an association of, on the one hand, Kate Andrews, on the other hand, James Delingpole. It can hold both those two in the same publication.
Well,
and then,
I don't know. I mean, God forbid Kate Andrews if James Delingpole is like in the same like Zoom chat with him, because Delingpole has gone completely. I mean, he's gone completely in the opposite direction than Spectator.
He has. Who will stand with me? You've all collapsed. I mean, even his brother's going, "Oh, James." But as I said, the Spectator will have all these voices, and Fraser Nelson in his editorial about Biden, he was saying probably a Biden win, and it will be a return to a kind of more stereotypical style of president, a sort of continuity. But then Fraser Nelson, to be fair, listed all the problems of Biden, all the baggage that Biden brings. So a lot of these guys that were, a few days ago, everybody was saying, chuck them under a bus. They know the baggage of, they're not looking at Biden with rose-colored glasses. But there is I think it comes back to there is a confusion. There is a kind of we haven't got the weapons to fight anymore. So what's the point? And some people are already got the mindset of the fight is over, the resistance begins. So you have all this kind of stuff going on that's fragmenting the right. But I would say, with the Spectator, what's happened to it? I'd just say, it is a magazine that has more diversity of opinion in it than any other. and you have to take the rough with the smooth. You are going to get an occasional Matthew Paris article in there, but you're also going to get Rod Liddell. You're going to get Douglas Murray. You're going to get Lionel Shriver. And remember, Shriver's just coming out of the left. She's a walk away from the left person. So he can't expect great things from Lionel Shriver all the time. She can be right, and she's making great strides in understanding freedom and liberty. But she's not all the way there.
Get her on here, I'll convert her quite easily.
Yeah, but
I can convert her in one day.
But you do look at The Spectator and you go, Kate Andrews, you're the weakest link. You are the weak one in this setup.
I think what annoyed. I mean, I never really liked Kate Andrews as like. I was always suspicious of her because she just seemed to. Have you seen the Kingsman Part 2, like the second film, Kingsman?
No, I haven't seen the second one actually. Right,
for those who've seen it, there's that ginger-haired actress who has that what's she called?
American or British?
American.
That's Emma Stone, is that?
No. Oh God, I can't remember.
I'll look it up.
If I just go on Kingsman 2. Let me just find the actress. Oh, Julianne Moore.
Julianne Moore, yes.
Yeah, she, in there, she comes across as this very sweet and sort of innocent, wholesome American woman, but in reality, she has like when she presents herself as in that way, and then but in reality, she's like a complete psychopath. Now, I'm not saying Kate Andrews is a psychopath or anything, but what I'm saying is Kate Andrews has presented herself in UK media as like the token conservative, but looking into her and like looking at her recent podcast appearances where I would be more forgiving if she said, I'm voting Biden, but I'm not happy about it, and she lists the reasons why. But she seems pretty happy about voting Biden, and
she was glowing.
And what made it worse is there are plenty of you could argue that Trump is a Keynesian, that Trump is this, that Trump is that. Fine, but her only reason for Trump is that he's mean, and it's like, fuck's sake, you have been writing articles for months now decrying the radical left, the destruction of American cities, the borderline the end of civilization. And what's happened to that, Kate? What's happened to guys, the Spectator? What's happened to all that? That threat and the radical left and the woke and the council culture. It's like they just like literally overnight forgotten about it and just gone, oh, we'll go for a safe pair of hands. It's like, and that's why I've come to the theory that they actually voted for it because they need a Biden presidency, because then they know it's going to get worse. It's going to get more woke. It's going to get more violence in the city. It's going to have more like defunding the police and Black Lives Matter riots, and it's just going to be more of it. And it means more articles for them, and it's more articles for the right. And it's the same thing. I actually think the Guardian. I wouldn't be surprised if all the Guardians vote Conservative because they just want a Conservative government in at the end of the day, because then it means more articles for them to write.
I used to say this about media coverage of England cricket. So if the England cricket team lost, you could generate more stories from it. So that the BBC would have this sports reporter who you would only ever hear if England lost a cricket match. Another abject display of batting, and he would have a voice like this, and then there would you could have forensics, what went wrong, who should be sacked, who should come in, what's the plan, whereas England win, it's just 1 or 2 pages.
Yeah.
And so in politics it can be like that. The thing is that there's so many better uh, female journalists on the right, and I think Kate Andrews and Isabel Oakeshott should just be, shown the door and to go. Liberal Democrat Party's just down the hall on the right, on the left.
I mean, I think I ended up just like retweeting everything that Kate Andrews said. Was basically just join the Lib Dems, please, or just just join them now.
And there's and you just go. I mean, I can think of 3 candidates. One, Laura Perrins, who's she's the female Delingpole. She's absolutely feisty as anything.
I've actually been enjoying her the content from her lately. So
it's I have to psych myself up to read it because you are in for a roller coaster ride. For more genteel takes, I go with Emma Webb. I think she's good. She's got that.
I still like. I know that like some people on the right have had enough of her, but I still like Julie Hartley-Brewer on some occasions. I know that she isn't always the.
No.
She. I think she would fit the classical liberal.
She is that.
Yeah, she is that because she isn't conservative. I wouldn't say on certain aspects, but she isn't woke, and she knows what the radical left are like, and she doesn't give them any crap. And again, she was right on Brexit. I don't know what and also, I mean, one thing I noticed, because has she made any comments about the US election at all? Because I think she has. I can't see it.
She has, over the last 4 years, she's been consistently anti-Trump. But in this election, she's not put the boot into Trump. She's not backed Biden either.
No, well, I think she knows that I think because she does have principles, and she probably looked at the US election and thought, yeah, that was rigged. I'm not touching that with the barge pole, because she knows what her viewers will be looking at it, and she can't really go out there and say on like talk radio, oh yes, the election, well done to President Biden, he beat that, we're going back to normal, because she knows her target audience. She knows that the globalists and the sort of the sort of localist factions, and if she ends up spouting pro Biden or like congratulating Biden, it would have a very negative effect on her. So
she also knows she really does know her core audience, and she's, I think, quite wisely said, here's some subjects that I feel more strongly about happening in the UK, and this is something I can speak with a bit of authority on. So she was going after, I mean, she tore one of her colleagues apart over the sacking of the FA chairman. I don't know if you saw that, but there was a Talk Sport commentator saying, well, what he said was seen to be a bit, and she said, oh, come off it. So she knows that that's something that is strength of free speech, freedom of expression. She's very strong on that. She's very strong on, upholding the right of the voters' will. So she's very classically liberal, and she will play to that audience. And as an aside, I once shared a swimming pool with her, but that's she's very mumsy in real life, very mumsy.
Yes. Well, I mean, for anyone like myself who, and I don't know about you, Rhubba, if you decide to go into politics itself, frontline politics itself, from what I understand, with politicians, anything like that with Julie Hartley-Brewer usually ends up with one losing career. So I will avoid her in that regard.
I've got too many skeletons in my cupboard.
Got too many skeletons.
I'll rule myself out. I could see myself as a Cummings figure or a Bannon figure, but I could never wear the crown, because there's things that will come out about, I experimented in my younger days. It can't come back. It can't. So I'll be Bannon or I'll be Cummings, and you, Owain, you can, and Rock Boy, you can lead the charge. As well, it's funny how things have worked out in the online right, because I began with the old fogey crowd. I'm Steve Buscemi, with the skateboard and the baseball cap back to front, going, "How's it going with you kids?" I find myself.
I don't think any of us have moved. I don't think you moved. I don't think British has so much moved. I don't think anyone's moved. I just think everything else has moved around us, and I think the famous Overton window has moved very far to the left over the last 10 years. I think, I mean, and this is the thing, like when I was a teenager, like 10 years ago, my views haven't changed at all in any sort of way, like political way. Well, maybe they have changed in some areas, but by and large, I've always been sort of right-wing conservative. I've never not been. But I've noticed you take like what was it, the feminists who ironically it was the feminists who've been defeated, but you cut off one head of the hydra and then three more appear with wokeism, critical race theory, and sort of extinction rebellion arseholes. So it hasn't always been that good, but we've had I think everything has changed around us, and I think we've sort of remained consistent. But from the outsider's perspective, we're probably like we're probably from the outsider's perspective, we're probably extreme like right wingers. I wouldn't be surprised if many saw us like that. Tonight's stream is technically wacky conspiracy theory. Talking about election fraud, which is impossible in a Western mature democracy. Didn't you know?
Well, once you consider this is the thing, Trump, people have spent 4 years thinking Trump is Hitler 2.0. And if you, this isn't an original take by me. I think this is something Dave Rubin, I think he was the first one to say this. Once you've convinced yourself over a 4-year period that Trump is Hitler 2.0, you start thinking anything is justified to stop Hitler.
Exactly. Exactly. And so when someone said to me, "Oh, do you think Democrats would really commit voter fraud?" And I'm thinking, yeah, I think they would. I think if there was the thing is, if you literally had like some of the radical left believing that Donald Trump is going to create concentration camps. I mean, actually, that's a good point. Actually, not concentration camps, of course, but did you see that? What was it? The Lincoln Project video of where like this woman and her daughter, teenage daughter, were driving to the Mexican border, and she was pregnant, and like I imagine like the sort of Trump Stasi stopped them, and they say to them, "Who's this? What's your name?" And she says, "Oh, Megan." And then he goes, "Are you pregnant?" And the mother goes, "No." So, "Where are you going?" And then he just grabs them out of the car and everything, because obviously they'll go off to get an illegal abortion. And that came from Republicans. Like they genuinely believe that Trump was going to do that. And then the other one was basically a mother waking up her son and says, "Is Trump president?" And he goes, "Of course he's president. He's going to be president for the next 16 years or something."
That one was again. I saw that one on the Ben Shapiro show, and I think Shapiro just absolutely he was laughing for about 5 minutes after that.
It is funny, but at the same time, it's scary because you think about it. There are some sections of society that think that Trump literally is going to invoke Julius Caesar, march on the Republic, declare the American Empire, and install a radical rights regime.
Yes. Well, the thing is, do you remember 4 years ago, right? Michael Moore did his thing. He did the big like a 2-hour presentation on the evils of Donald Trump. This is back in 2016, and he finished it off by saying, "And if you vote for Trump, he will be the last president America ever has." You just go, right. And since then, you've had midterms, and he hasn't done anything unconstitutional, and he's played within the constitutional rules. What the hell are you talking about? What?
Yeah,
And it's just, but, and I think the left have got far more conspiracy theories than the right have. I mean, all the right's conspiracy theories have just come up in the last few months, and even then, one or two of them have got very good basis for being true.
yeah. I mean, QAnon, I would say the most ridiculous conspiracy theory out there on the right. Again, I mean, what is the basis for that conspiracy theory? There's international elites who are satanic pedophiles, and Trump is battling them behind the scenes in this mighty holy war between good and evil. Well, we know about Jeffrey Epstein. We know about the island. It's not like it's not true. It's just not in the reality that they claim it to be. It's not on a biblical scale. It's just not correct in that sense.
There are a
But
few
we know
things.
that there are people in Hollywood. It's been well documented for years, like decades even, and even Jeffrey Epstein, that it's all known that there's been this sort of sick perversion amongst the top of society. I mean, Alex Jones has talked about it.
In his own style. It's interesting because I heard a BBC thing, the BBC on PM did this thing about American voters and some American politicians who believe that, you know, in the upper echelons of society, particularly in the left-leaning upper echelons and Hollywood and in politics, that there is a kind of a genuine paedophile scandal. But this BBC report tagged on satanic at every moment, and they were going around interviewing Trump supporters at political rallies, saying, "Do you believe there's a satanic paedophile ring in the top of the Democrat Party and in Hollywood?" And the Joe Public was saying, "Well, paedophile ring, yes. Satanic, that's a bit." And that's where I think, you know, you've got to be careful, because I think with so many of these conspiracy theories, I'm trying to a lot of it is actually trying to figure out where the left are at and where they want to go. So with the paedophile thing, I think, yes, there is. We know it with Weinstein, Epstein, a number of others. And this dates back to the earliest days of Hollywood. There's always been sex scandals, and the studios employed professional media handlers to quash stories and bury things. Yeah, the Polanski thing is very complicated. In fact, it's its own case on its own. There's other cases, usually involving studio executives rather than actors and directors. But there's the one that's recent is the stuff that happened to the child actor Corey Feldman. I think that is really interesting. But this goes back. Decades, even up to a century ago, things were happening. If you Google the Black Dahlia murder case, which I'm sure our friend Teabag will do a video on one day, the Black Dahlia murder case in 1947, that's linked to Hollywood as well. But we know this is true. The satanic aspect, and people are going back to that whole what happens at Bohemian Grove when they start chanting to this giant wooden carving of an owl, and you go, okay, so now we're starting to get into the realms of big speculation. It's likewise, you know, I hear somebody saying, is the World just what is the reach of the World Economic Forum? Is Klaus Schwab really Blofeld? How big a threat is he to the world? Well, Klaus Schwab does have all these batshit crazy ideas for reordering the world. However, what I found was interesting is that speaking to people who work in the City of London, I mean, bankers in the City of London, they all consider him a crank. And where my wife works, and I've got to be sotto voce here, and I cannot dox her as well, but let's just say she works in the City of London for a very famous bank. And she's not a teller as well. She's up in the high offices there. But every year they say, "Oh, Davos is coming up again," and all the City of London bankers go, "Oh, I don't want to go. Don't send me." They consider it a bunch of drunken cranks, and they say Soros crank, Schwab crank. And the City of London, Klaus Schwab might sit there and says, "Yes, and we'll all eat textured vegetable protein, and we will, did this kind of, and no one will earn anything." And the banks go, "Ain't happening on our watch, pal," because the banks, City of London, the big banking financial center of the world, they stand to lose out if Schwab has his vision.
You see, I think Schwab has his power with think tanks, not banks.
Yes.
I think that's where people get confused. I think banks are there for money. Like literally, they see Schwab and they just see this crazy old crowd with stupid, like fucking Bond villain-esque clothing.
That is exactly what they think. And it was a couple of years ago, I listened in on a video call because my wife was working at home that day. And they had a video conferencing thing with all the people, some guys in the office, some guys working from home. And what they did was when the World Economic Forum met at Davos, nobody in London wanted to go. So they sent somebody from the New York office. And this guy, typical, he was a Hillary supporter, and he was campaigning for her back in 2016 and raising money. And he says, "I'm here in Davos, and you can really feel the positive vibe in the room." And all the British bankers, like in London, were miming gagging reflexes of vomiting. And I'm saying these are not minions in the banking world. This is quite high up in the banking world.
And that's the problem because it's think tanks. I mean, one of the biggest problem with relationship with the British the British political system and the banks isn't the problem. It's the relationship within the British political system and think tanks. I mean, think
definitely.
tanks are the cancer of society. Personally, I think British government was more intertwined with the banking system. I think there would be more economically literate politicians. I don't think you would have ridiculous spending policies. I don't think you would. I think you would have maybe people on the conservative side who would be more economically conservative than they are at the moment, which is
definitely. I
mean, it's amazing because that's what the Camerons, that's what the big champion of Camerons and May was, that economically to the right but socially to the left, that was the way it was meant to be.
But look at how the media framed the banking industry because of the actions of, let's face it, no more than half a dozen people.
It was Lehman Brothers, wasn't it?
It was. Much. So, and Bernie Madoff, and most of the rot was coming from the American banking. Yeah. It was not the City of London. The City of London, I've met quite a few, and I experience it through my wife's work, and they are very conscientious and law-abiding, and it doesn't mean to say that they know all the dirty tricks in the book because they're looking out for it so they don't get caught out by the dirty tricks department. I'm
100% certain that insider trading, which is what every banker doesn't want to. Because if you get caught doing it, you go to prison. You end up losing your license, and you can never work in that sector again.
Nick Leeson was dealt with very roughly to set an example to others. But even then, he was just a stockbroker. He was a guy in a stripy jacket. He wasn't that high up.
No. Now, before we go, I have decided, because the Monolith has sent me a video to share with you all.
The Monolith.
And
I love it.
The Monolith sent it to me, and it's not pleased that we haven't shown it sooner.
Do you know, while this is going, when that footage came out from Utah and those two men are circling around it, I did the thing where I took the music from 2001 and put it on top of that, and it worked perfectly.
I can't believe they touched it, though. I mean, haven't they seen any like horror film or any sci-fi film? You don't touch the bloody thing. What's wrong with you guys?
Well, to be fair, in 2001, when they touched the Monolith, it just gave everybody a headache.
Yeah.
Oh, the Bohemian Grove. Yes, this is it.
Yeah, this is what the Monolith wanted me to show.
When will ye learn that me ye cannot slay? Year after year ye burn me in this grove, lifting your fury shouts of triumph to the stars. But when again ye turn your faces to the marketplace, do ye not find me waiting as of old? Fools! Fools! Fools to dream ye conquer care!
Nay, thou mocking spirit, it is not all a dream. We know thou waitest for us. With this our sylvan awful day has ended. We shall meet thee and fight thee as of old, and some of us prevail against thee, and some thou shalt destroy. But this too we know. Year after year within this happy grove, our fellowship bends thee for a space. Thy malevolence which would pursue us here has lost its power under these pleasant trees. So shall we burn thee once again this night, and in the flames that eat thine effigy, we shall read the sign, Midsummer sets us free.
Ye shall burn me once again! Not with me, flame, which hither ye have brought from regions where I reign. Ye fools and priests, I spit upon your fire.
Not long left.
Grandson of all mortal wisdom, our Bohemia, we beseech thee, grant us thy counsel.
Right.
I first saw that years ago. That John Ronson did a book and a TV show called Them, Adventures with Extremists, and he was going around sort of meeting all the conspiracy theorists. Really good book and quite a good TV show. And I saw that, and you know, if you're not prepared for it, you think, what the hell? maybe it was all right. Maybe it was, they were all correct, Alex Jones. But
I just want to say, Rhubba, if you were like on a camping holiday in the woods, or like, I guess like if I was walking my dog in the woods one evening, and then I heard this kerfuffle, over the way, over the river, and I saw that and like an effigy and all that and that creepy laughter and everything. I mean, I think that would radicalize me. I'd be like, shit.
It might. I also read Richard Nixon's memoirs, which he wrote in the late 70s. And he wrote about Bohemian Grove. It crops up in a few places. And he said, he writes things like, once the silly pantomime was out of the way, I could start talking to people about serious issues. What are we going to do with China? What are we? And so he considered it a silly pantomime. And when I first saw it, it was a bit of a shock because it's Bohemian Grove, Bohemia, the birthplace of the Illuminati, and they're burning this effigy, and there's robes and all that. And then I thought about it, and I said, well, we have all these odd village rituals in the countryside, which aren't a million miles away, where things get burnt. And
it's children though. That's the clinch. I mean, it's like an effigy of like.
I thought it was an owl they burnt. They burnt a giant owl.
There was the owl was the worshipping thing. It was the effigy of a straw. Well, this is the controversial bit. Some say, oh, it's not a child, but it's in the size and shape of a child. And then like Alex Jones says, no, it was a child. He got up right close because he actually got up, like he walked around the side, and then he walked up to the owl and everything, and it was like, it was like the effigy of a child. So
I think it's one of those things that a lot of the people, of politicians and business people, will go to Bohemian Grove and they'll think that's just a pantomime, and they'll just like not think anything more of it. There could be something deeper down. It's kind of like a circle. Those who are milling around, who are invited but don't participate, they're on the outer circle. Maybe there's something, you've got to really be interested, really get close, and then you're admitted, and then you're told what it's really all about.
Now, Nixon had a good take on Bohemian Grove. Did you know what he said about Bohemian Grove?
Well, I did read in his memoirs that he was saying that it was like there was a pantomime, but he went there to meet people, and he would like meet them. He would only go for like an hour or two. Have these, that kind of let's do a walk by where we walk down a corridor and we can say a couple of things out of the view of the press, and then get. But did he say something else about it?
Yeah, because he stopped going in the end, and he explained why in his tapes, and it was talking to, I think, one of his aides, and he just said, listen, this chap, and I'm quoting this, by the way, so YouTube don't get mad. You've never seen so much, faggy shit in your life, or something like that.
This is a quote, YouTube, quote,
end quote. That's what he said. Obviously he got sick and tired of it at some point.
Look, is there I think there's more of a case to be made that there is a high up paedophile ring in America than there was in the UK, because in the UK we ended up investigating certain political figures and there was like Leon Britton, and there was absolutely no evidence. It was based off the ramblings, but that definitely, you're dealing with people like Lord Boothby way back.
I think it's definitely prevalent in the United States. I think also, if I was going to be a betting guy, and I do bet, I would say the one state where it probably where it'd be prevalent in higher echelons in one state in particular would be California.
Oh yeah.
And I think there's multiple reasons. I think first of all, you got that's the birthplace of NAMBLA.
Yes. You've
got Hollywood, but also there's a third thing in there. This is where I go a bit based and controversial here. Not gay people or lesbians or any transgender people, but the LGBT movement.
The movement itself, yes.
The movement itself, the organization itself, has played close to the wind with this, with paedophilia. Very close to the wind. More so, I mean, I know there was things with Liberty group here in the UK, which also was seemed to be quite pro-paedophile in the way that they defend, and like certain groups in back in the day in this country. But in America, they definitely play close to the wind. And I think one thing we're seeing through from the LGBT community, the LGBT movement, I won't say community, movement even, is that it's like in America, it's the child drag queens. And I don't care what you say, that is paedophilic. There's no.
It absolutely is. It absolutely.
I mean, you've got that one of them that they actually took to like a gay strip club, and they're like chucking dollar bills at this.
Yeah, wasn't it that Desmond is amazing?
Yeah, I know that's fucking paedophilia, and
it is.
Yeah.
And of course, there was the other clip. The little girl's birthday party where she's made to sit in a chair and watch this performance, and she's visibly uncomfortable. I mean, and it was shocking. It's disgusting, and I think you're right. And there's something about the movement. As again, we're not talking about the individuals who are gay or trans or lesbian. We're talking about the movement. Why is it politicized? Because you would think, and then again, this is something that Dave Rubin says and Douglas Murray says, and they should know, and that is, we won our freedom, we won our rights. What's left to give us other than just let us get?
They're not going to be sent to any loony asylums anymore. If you're gay, you're not going to be sent to a loony asylum anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That battle is won. So why is the movement still around? If not to push something else.
Well, if you take the Sargon pill on this particular subject, the battle for them isn't over, because there's one last frontier for them to conquer, and that's what we've been referencing. And I think it will happen. You will see the radical left advocating for dropping the age limit. They won't be saying, "Oh yeah, we're for paedophilia now," because that'd be ridiculous. They wouldn't say it out loud, but they'll be arguing for reducing the age limit to probably about, I would say, 13. I think that's what they will go to. Then
and I think in this country it will start in Scotland. It will start there, and and then they'll try and say, "See, we do it in Scotland." So it's funny, because 30 years ago, it used to be with the Thatcher government that an unpopular policy would be trialed out in Scotland first. And you go, so it's central government in London, Conservative government trialing out something like poll tax in Scotland first to see how it would go down. And we kind of like that in reverse, in the fact that the unpopular policies will be trialed out in Scotland, but by the Scottish government. So it's not going to be a right-wing Conservative government in London forcing
the SNP is our greatest ally in that regard. Because and this is the thing I just don't understand with the Scots, is like, I mean, the SNP, I mean, like, I again, a news update with that. Have you heard what happened to Ian Blackford? Well, what's going to happen to him?
Not yet. I'm still reeling over one. The news cycle moves so fast.
Basically, what's happened, and I'll just give you guys a lowdown with this. A photographer who's like a freelance photographer took a couple of photos around Caithness up in Scotland in the Highlands, of all like the mountains and the lochs and all that sort of stuff. Very pretty, very nice photos, and he uploaded it on Twitter and was saying, "Hey guys, look at this photos of Scotland. It's wonderful, isn't it beautiful up there? Up here and everything." And Ian Blackford, or Highland Shrek, as I like to call him, because he doesn't like people going into his swamp, decided to retweet and basically say to the guy, I hope you didn't come up here during our lockdown period because you acted with against the law and everything. And he basically, saying, I might have to report you to the police and everything, and find out further details. And because Ian Blackford is mentally challenged in every single way, the guy responded and said, I've been living in Scotland since March. Because this is the other thing, this important thing I forgot, actually. I pointed out, the guy who posted this, he comes from southern England, and he puts in his Twitter bio, I'm from southern England. And he said, well, you come up from southern England and up to Scotland, and you're breaking our lockdown rules and everything. So there was a very ethnic sort of anti-English rhetoric to his sort of tirade at this guy on Twitter. And this guy responded saying, yes, I come from southern England, but I've moved up to Scotland early last year, and I've been living in Scotland ever since. And he Ian Blackford got ratioed, and he got ratioed hard. He deleted the Twitter post. And I've never seen him actually get ratioed that hard, to be honest. On Twitter before. I've seen other SNP people be ratioed. I haven't seen him though. And it resulted in him saying, I'm so sorry. And he even said that he phoned up the guy to apologize. And while in the conversation, apparently this is from the other chap, he said to him, just so you know, I'm not anti-English. I have my great grandparent on such and such side was English, and so I've got part of English in me and everything. And the guy on the other guy who was the freelance photographer, he wasn't having any of it, because he was like, well, no, you just bullied somebody and threatened them, and because the COVID laws in Scotland are so strict, he basically accused them of breaking the law. And so what's happened to Ian Blackford now is this freelance photographer is going to take him to court. So I've heard. And I say good on him, because the thing there is, one of the problems in Scotland is the SNP are like a one-party state up there. They have no accountability. They can get away with murder near enough. And I tell you what, at the last general election, there was a lot of strange stuff going up in certain seats in Scotland with the ballots and everything. And that's all I'll say. I won't say any more than that, but there was a lot of strange stuff going on up there. And that's the problem. I mean, once we're at one-party states or one-party regions, Scotland's got the SNP, and they are. I tell you what, there's a lot of shady stuff that go on up there, and they can get away with a lot, and they do get away with a lot. And so I think when it comes to legal stuff, because this is the best bit about it is this is their own legislation they put forward. I mean, he wouldn't be able to take him to court if his party didn't introduce this lockdown legislation. So I just think it's massive poetic justice.
But yeah, I mean, it'd be a blow has to be dealt to the SNP. I found myself a couple of weeks ago doing the unthinkable, something that up until that moment I would never thought of doing. But George Galloway said, I want to take on the SNP. They cannot they cannot act with this level of impunity. Who's with me? And I said, I'm going to retweet it. I'm going to retweet support George Galloway. I can't believe it. But Galloway's absolutely right. There's they need to be broken.
Yes, they do need to be broken. And I again, I know that one thing I've noticed, and this is something that I've really noticed something with some of the opinion polls with Scotland, is that after the last election, they went up to 60% support in Scotland, some ridiculous levels, and then it sort of dropped down to 58, and it's sort of been sitting consistently around there. But I've noticed in the last two opinion polls, they've dropped from 58 to 50. And I've noticed that they started dropping further. And I do wonder, because at the same time, what if the opinion polling like in America here, it's just been wrong.
Hmm.
Because we forget that Boris was predicted. He was predicted to have like a pretty good like landslide, well, not landslide, but a pretty good majority. But they didn't estimate. They sort of underestimated, and in fact, Boris got like 30 more seats than was predicted. So I just wonder if all of this opinion polling, all of this supposed support for the SNP is really, it's inflated, like what happened with like Nate Silver's polling in the United States election. Because it's the other important thing. Like, even if Biden does win and he becomes president, the opinion polling sector in America, in this country, must be destroyed and must go out of business, because not only did they get it wrong, I mean, they had like Biden on states which I guess in that scenario he would carry. They had him like on double digits, when in reality he's barely got it with like 0.5. So I just wonder that with the SNP, I've noticed interesting trends where they've been slowly, as lockdowns go along, their support on opinion polling has gone down. It's no longer at your upper 50s, 60% region. It's sort of been knocked down to 50%, but it hasn't dipped below 50% that I've seen yet. But it looks like maybe in a couple months' time we might see it drop below 50%. Though I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen the figures on London as well, and it's got Sadiq Khan at 51%, and I just go, surely not. I mean, come on, the pollsters are, trying to pull.
They don't. I mean, the thing, they don't ask. They probably will ask people who live in Southwark and around the central boroughs in London, but the outer boroughs like your Dagenham and your and you I don't know the other ones like Golders Green and such, and around there, they won't ask those areas around there in opinion polling. From what I understand from an internal party polling, Sean Bailey's actually doing quite well.
Yes.
He's closed a couple months ago. He closed a 12.5% gap. That's what I heard anyway, which was quite impressive if that's true, because that means he's gone from. I mean, Trump. Sorry, Sadiq Khan has gone from quite a substantial lead to quite a short lead and a slim lead even. And so what that means is another 6 months' time, if Sean Bailey can keep up the momentum, he could be in a position where he could just edge ahead. But it depends what happens with the Heritage Party and the Lawrence Fox Party. And the Party.
I think it looks like the Heritage Party's faltering, because it looks like they've come out as kind of anti-vaxxer, and they could end up looking like fringe nutters. I think Lawrence Fox, backed up by Calvin Robinson?
Yeah,
looks a lot stronger.
I think Lawrence Fox should just join Nigel Farage's Reform. I think those two parties should merge.
Yes,
I think they will end up merging. I think the problem is, I think, and this is where I know that like people like Sargon and such have been talking about like the Reform Party are going to be the new Conservatives, and then the Conservatives will just become the new left, because then like all the right-wing Conservatives will just move over to the Reform Party. But you have to remember, if the Reform Party is going to be made up of like the Brexit Party, there are a lot of former communist and socialist workers in the Brexit Party, and there'll be a lot of communist and former socialist workers in the Reform Party, and their beliefs are probably, I mean, they was the same under the Brexit Party. They'll probably still be the same under the Reform Party. So the question is, how do you know they just won't become a left-wing party overnight? Which it could happen. I mean, you know, like Claire Fox and something. I mean, she's still a communist. Sorry, I mean, I'm not mean to rain on anyone's parade. I'm just saying. I mean,
Yeah,
it
and
could
she would happily admit that as well. But you know, it's just that on a couple of issues, like she overlaps with certain members of the Conservative right.
They do. I don't think Farage's party would. Again, I don't think it would be the Conservative party that many dissident right people are looking for, because you have to remember Farage does well among Labour voters. And that's what UKIP did, that's what Brexit Party did, and that's what he would do with the Reform Party. This new party, he wants to try and get votes from the Conservatives. I think he could get some.
Yes.
But I also think it would be like what they had with the referendum party in '97, where there'd be they would take some votes away, but it wouldn't be like a mass exodus that some had predicted. But the risk is, if you have a very strong Labour leadership going into an election, then you could have a situation where you have several seats which flip to Labour because of a couple thousand votes which go to Reform or referendum part or whatever the party is, and then you have a Labour government. And I think there are some people on the right, distant right, that do want a Labour government because it gives them something to moan about. I don't know why.
I've heard the theory. The theory is right, and this comes from a couple of people who I've subsequently blocked. But you know, this is a take of Powell's Ghost and Charlemagne, to name but two, and that is you. Right. They can't tell the difference between the Conservative Party and the Labour Party. Well, there's actually quite a bit of difference. I mean, even though the Conservative Party is horrendously leaning to the left on so many issues, but that's a struggle they have within the Conservative Party, let alone, you know, but Labour is everything you hate, but on steroids and faster. And I think they missed that point. But they go, okay, Labour gets in. This is the theory. Labour gets in, makes a complete hash of everything. Right? They ruin the economy. They ruin this. They ruin that. And the infrastructure collapses. And then out of the ashes rises a genuine Conservative movement to sweep in. And you go, that's assuming there's any ashes for the right. I said, don't you think the first thing a Labour government on steroids is going to do is make it impossible for any right-wing organisation to ever emerge ever again?
It didn't happen under New Labour. After, let's look what they did. They ruined the economy. They dragged us into an illegal war. They dragged us into another war in Afghanistan, which had little gain in any respecting way, and the sad thing was the amount of life that was lost because of it. They then, they basically abolished the concept of the United Kingdom through devolution. I mean, and then look what happened in 2010. The insurgent movement was the Liberal Democrats.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing: that under Blair was undefeated. Okay, he won those 3 elections and he was undefeated. And what he did with Alistair Campbell and Peter Mandelson in tow was to, they quashed the right in this country, but not in an obvious way. They didn't pass a law saying, banning parties and passing enabling acts. But they did things like encourage local councils to remove people from flying Union flags or flying English flags.
Yeah,
they went through the local Labour councils saying, right, stop people from doing this, stop people from doing that. I know it's become a bit of a joke, the war on Christmas, but there was a genuine. If you can delegitimize the Christian aspects of Christmas, please do so. And there was a lot the Blair government did through the local councils to try and flip the areas almost. And he did drag public opinion, the smears, the denigration of anything coming out of the Conservative Party, the manipulation of the press, the media, the politicization of the civil service. And that's what a Blair government did. Of course, he didn't pass an enabling act because that would make him seem like a tyrant. And he always cloaked everything he did under the smile and the charm and the sugar-coated pill.
He was a Fabian, and that's what they do. Harks back to like the book, The Long March Through the Institutions, which is pretty much what Blair did. But yes, it happened before him, but it was basically he just was the final nail that hammered into the coffin that already.
But when Gordon Brown takes over the reins, he hasn't got the charm. He doesn't sugarcoat the pill. But as you said, you would think this would lead to a right-wing resurgence. Well, it didn't quite. First of all, the Conservatives had to find a leader that was palatable to all those people who had been voting for Blair. So it couldn't be Michael Howard. It couldn't be David Davis. It had to be David Cameron. For all his faults, he was the man of that hour, of that time, because nothing else was good. You weren't going to dislodge Labour any other way. But as you said, this resurgent movement was the Liberal Democrats.
It was still I remember how they were very much considered the insurgent outsiders. I think Boris could have taken on in 2010 Labour.
He was still pretty new, wasn't he? I mean, he just made that shift.
I think he could have. I think he could have done it. I think. When it comes to future leaders of the Conservative Party, the only people I can think of would be there's three people, and that's Michael Gove, Dominic Raab, or Ben Bradley.
Yeah, Bradley's very new, but he captures the normies so well. He is you look at him and you go, he's young. He knows where the normie, the bloke in the street is.
And I've spoken to him like a couple of times over like Messenger, over like WhatsApp and such. I mean, he's a pretty good guy. I've actually asked him if he wanted to come onto one of these streams.
Oh, right. Okay.
He said no because I shared a link, and I think he probably saw what some streams we talked about, and he was like, yeah, it'd be really cool, but if I come on, he said basically if I come on here, I'll get into a lot of trouble. It'd be a lot of trouble.
It won't be you, but it's like the people we know.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I think it's because he saw the one that Sargon was on with me. And I think that is he was like,
the optics on Sargon still aren't good, even though I say to people,
he absolutely demolished the like Sky News and Victoria Derbyshire when they tried to like smear him, because it was like I think that's why it's really funny, because the media, I always thought the media would go after him like continually, like afterwards, like a sort of, like some wacky Alex Jones figure, but they just sort of, after his European election campaign, they just sort of left him alone, which I thought was rather
been back. Yeah, they've probably seen off. Oh, he's not an electoral threat. Therefore, what he represents, the movement he represents, is not an electoral threat. Well, it is, but not in the way you think.
No.
And an interesting take on Sargon. And I've been a fan, and I've been on a live stream with him, and he knows who I am. But one thing that I didn't consider, and it was the comedian Simon Evans, whose criticism of Sargon was he doesn't go deep enough. His reading and his understanding on philosophy and politics is still quite shallow. And I thought, okay, that's interesting. I sort of ping messages with Simon Evans, and he's so well read, and so that to go to what he considers a deep level is very deep indeed.
I think Sargon has still has like he's imported with him, which because obviously he started off in the skeptic community, and I have my views on the skeptic community. I don't think I didn't think much of them then, and I do not think whatever the remnants of them are now, which is basically just leftists at this stage, like edgy atheist leftists, quote unquote edgy. I mean, not really that edgy. I don't. I think he's imported a lot of bad habits from them in the way that he deconstructs philosophy. Because one thing with the skeptic community is that they are, and again, some of you might not agree with this, but they were nihilists at the end of the day, and they had no value. They didn't like see any value with culture, with history, with anything like that. And I can see why Sargon sort of left them, because he does have that interest in history and everything. He talks a lot about it, especially culture and everything. But I think in some of his ways he does import it, a bit of it with he has imported it across with him, and I just think he might. I mean, we all have habits, don't we?
We do. Yes.
I mean, one of my things is I mean, at the moment, I've sort of. I mean, you might wonder why, like on my Twitter, people you see like me have like MAGA hat on. I've changed my name, like even like MAGA guy and everything. I think a lot of it is down to the fact that I don't want to give Gammon Easter Worshipper the satisfaction that because I've been like constantly saying, Trump's going to win, and I'm not backing down until the last court case is done and it's all settled and there's nowhere else for it to go.
Yeah.
I'm not conceding. I'm not giving in to that point.
No. I'm amazed he hasn't been thrown under the bus like a lot of other people. But he's the guy that, at a summer's picnic, he's brought the umbrella and he'll look at the skies and go, rain later.
Yes. I do still like him though. I mean, he's still.
He's been fantastic. He's been a staunch ally. I mean, there's a couple of guys I've got to really shout out. Somebody made a criticism of me. What's my bad habit? And people have said to me, "You make everything about yourself." And I think, okay, that's because people dump things on my doorstep. Like, I have to make it about myself because you dumped this on my doorstep. But I cannot detach myself from an issue. That's the thing, because I look at it, how's it going to affect me? So yes, I do. This is a habit I've picked up. Yeah. The first thing I do when I confront an issue is see it through the prism of my experience. And some people don't like that. And but Gammon, when I went through that, a couple of bad times with AA and Binary Surfer and Charlemagne, he was there DMing me on Twitter. Are you all right? I've got your back. There's a few other guys like that. King Humbug, he's another one. Spoon. These Owine, yourself, Harrion, and Britisher.
It's awkward for me and Owine Harrion because we sort of jump between both. I mean, I've spoken to Charlemagne. I've spoken to I haven't spoken to AA. I've sort of chatted to him on deep law and everything, but and I think on like Twitter and such, and then obviously Owine and such, and but we're still all three of us are involved in both areas, and so that's why it's like a bit awkward. I know that Owine, I imagine for Owine, because he's quite active with yourself and Britisher on your This Week in History.
The thing is, he won't get it in the neck from AA, but he might get it from some of the other guys in that crowd.
I think so, because I know that Owine is. I know that he's recently had problems with the Conservative Party, but I think his problems are more to the local party association. And I will be the first person to say there are some party associations, Conservative Party associations in this country, which do not deserve to exist and have really crap leadership. And I mean, there's one where
Richmond, we've mentioned before.
Yeah, there's one where I used to live, which were historically known to be absolutely useless and crap and cronyistic, and hence why I didn't join because of that. I just wouldn't join them because I didn't want to be part of that association. But there's some which are okay. I still say the worst association though in the country has to be the Richmond Conservatives,
Oh yeah,
because they're the ones that are still championing BLM even to this day.
yeah. And you think what? Well, yeah, it's a proper. They need dangling over the coals, frankly.
Well, my message is Heritage Party reform and Lawrence Fox Party. If you stand in, like I said, like with Richmond, stand in Richmond, win in Richmond. I don't care. I would literally say to everyone, vote for those guys.
Mm. In fact, it actually would be helpful if you targeted, and I think local elections are key, and you start off there. Everybody thinks in terms of general elections, but you start off local elections and you start there and you just look around the country. If you're Heritage or Reform or Lawrence Fox is it called Reclaim?
Yeah, Reclaim
think,
or something like that,
okay.
yeah.
And you look around and you say, well, why do you exist? Because the party that you put your hopes in to protect your freedoms has let you down. Okay, not all of them, because there are still some, like Bren Badley, as we said, Ian Duncan Smith, David Davis, there's Graham Brady, there's still proper conservatives out there. You don't want to take them down. You don't want their scalps, but you want the weaks. You want the ones. Why the heck, like Richmond? Why the heck are you in this party?
Yeah.
And you want to go after them first and draw up a list, and we'll help point you in the right direction.
Yeah,
and you just go.
A Conservative minister who resigned today over the fact that the government has now, basically reduced funding. Reduced near enough, stopped full funding in the foreign aid budget. And you've got one Conservative minister who just resigned, and in the letter and everything, so I'm good conscience, can't go ahead with this. And my message to her was, okay, bye.
She was in the House of Lords, wasn't she? She was in the. Yeah. She was a Lord. Yeah.
In the Lords, yeah. My message to her was, bye.
But certainly point. And that's where these parties can get traction, because they exist because the freedom and liberty ball that the Conservatives were left holding a few years ago, they dropped. And if the Conservatives held on to that ball, there wouldn't be a need for Heritage or Reform. There wouldn't be that need, but there is.
I think one of the problems is that the membership are. I always say like this: the membership are blind, and they're still looking for their Thatcher, and they grab the closest thing that they think it could be, and it turns out to be a disappointment. May was a disappointment, and I think for many, Boris is becoming that next disappointment.
They saw in Boris in 2016. They saw a winner. They saw a guy who won a London mayoral election twice, and they saw the man who could capture the zeitgeist of the nation at that time. Since then, COVID's happened. A lot of people, insiders, are saying, he's not been the same since he came out of hospital. That something in him, COVID, I think, has broken him. He didn't expect it, and it's kind of it's not the fight he was planning. It's not what he was working towards. It's happened, and he's too weak.
Yeah, I've heard that as well. That it's really changed him.
But I think he was weak going into it, and it happened, and he's come out, physically and morally weaker than he was. So Boris January, and then COVID happened, and then he's caught out there, and he follows the sage advice, and he does all these things. Then he gets it himself. He goes into hospital. He comes out, and he just doesn't seem. He seems to be kind of weak in spirit, and he was weak physically, and he is sort of drifting between these different voices. So he had Cummins and Frost on one hand, being still as bellicose and belligerent as ever, but Boris is not there. He's drifting towards Carrie Simmons.
Yeah.
And
they hired a Guardian, an ex-Guardian writer as like was it the press secretary?
Mm.
I mean, what's that about? I mean, I think that I mean, I don't think Boris is going to be the next leader at the next general election. That's my feeling.
Mm.
I don't think he's. I think number one. I don't think he wants to be. I think he probably wants to resign at that point because he would have as long as Brexit goes on smoothly from now, which so far I don't see any indications it's not going to. I think he will want that would be his crowning achievement to then go. I don't think. I think one of the problems, the sad thing of it, is because of he has changed, and he's definitely weaker. And I hate to say it, but at a general election, with the current Boris that we have, and the current Keir Starmer that we got, I can very much see a Labour victory at the next general election.
Yes, because it's
very likely. I think it's incredibly likely, to be honest.
I think it's a possibility. I wouldn't put it as high as very likely, but simply because even with Keir Starmer, people quite rightly say, well, about Starmer, well, what is it that you want? What is it that you're going to do? And he's trying to be all things to all sides, saying nothing, doing nothing. But you can see the mood of the public is fed up with lockdowns, and it's fed up with the authoritarianism, and he can only offer more of that.
Yeah,
and I think that's his Achilles heel.
I don't think you would have Conservative voters from Boris's 2019 going over to him, but I just think what you'll have is Conservative voters just won't turn out and vote on election day.
Yeah, he'll squeak in that way. Yes.
Yeah, and Labour will, and then Labour will win because of just low Conservative turnout.
Yeah, no, you're right there. That is likely. It's not that he will turn back the red wall. He won't lure them back. He's not in a position to lure them back. No. But you said it's low turnout, people fed up. It's the red wall staying away, saying, well, Conservatives let me down. Labour is still a joke and a mess, and I don't, they're not going to do anything for me. So yes, you have this massive doubt, just malaise within the Conservative voting base, and he'll squeak in that way. Yeah, that is that's very likely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and of course, like all left-wing parties, no matter how narrow their victory is and how low the voter turnout is, they will claim it's a decisive mandate for their policies. The country has spoken. Well, no, the country didn't really speak. But the Labour and the Democrats have always said an inch is as good as a mile, and they'll claim it as a mandate for sweeping change. Yes. They always do. They always do. At least in 1997, Blair could claim, but then people voted for Blair because they thought he wasn't going to be dangerous. That's part of his appeal, was that he's not tainted by corruption, and he's taken Labour from lunatic socialism to some kind of fluffy Labour light. That's the marketing image, and that's a gimmick, and that's why they voted for him. They didn't vote for him to say, "Yeah, Tony, radical change."
No. But the thing with the Conservatives I mean, it's hard to remember. It's hard for people to realise, but the Conservative Party in '97 under John Major was a mess in on itself. It was a
Yeah.
terrible mess.
Oh yeah, it was. It was just you know,
It
there
was
was
like one
every
scandal
day.
after another.
It was one after another, and you know, when ministers are being sent to prison for perjury, you know,
Yeah.
and that's such a shame, because in a lot of ways Jonathan Aitken was a good guy and he was talented, and yet he, you know, hubris, ego, vanity all got to him, and he ended up in prison. And you know, and you just go, well, there's that talent lost. And then Portillo went through no fault of Portillo's, it had to be said. But
the funny thing is, if the Lib Dems were let's just say there was a 5% swing from the Lib Dems to Labour in that election. So there wasn't like such a high Lib Dem vote in '97. They just went to Labour. The Conservatives would have had barely 10 seats.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, and that's why every time John Major opens his mouth, I just go, "Shut up! I don't care. You're a loser." I don't care.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, he is the epitome of. I mean, he's the epitome of the worst of the Conservative Party. He and I think he brought down Thatcher, took control of the party, and handed it nicely to Blair.
Yeah, have a functioning economy, Tony.
Yes. I say I'll probably call it a night in a minute. So
yeah, we didn't really touch on the dissident right and the fragmentation of the right. We touched on it, but we didn't really delve deep. And I think that could be for another time. And it would be nice to open that up, to have a bit of a panel on that one.
I know. I was going to hope to get like more people on, because like a lot of people are doing like their streams anyway. And it was I asked Harry and stuff, but they were doing their streams, and then we moved it. So I was going to organise it maybe some point in the future. We could get you, Harry, and maybe a few others on, Owine and such, and we could.
I can give you a list in private of who I do not want to appear on the show with, but I think you can guess.
Well, one of them I don't know how to contact anymore. The other one probably wouldn't come on anyway.
Because we're all cucks.
Yeah, and the other and then like the last one probably he would come on because he has before, but I don't want my stream to become a shouty stream with each other and then rage quitting halfway through. But no, I'd probably have like your Harrians and your Jozzers and such.
Joz is fine.
Yeah, I mean the non-hamster material, I guess.
Yeah, because we can then talk about we can talk about the rise of the hamsters. And
actually, to be honest, I'd like to get the Britisher on here sometimes.
I think he has. I mean, anything that happened to me at the hands of the hamsters, nothing compared with what he's had to endure.
Yeah.
I mean,
I was going to say, with the distant right and the right, it'd be great to get him on, because he's the one that's had. I remember, I can't remember, but it was like, I think it was something like YouTube video or something, and then you had all these like patriotic alternative and Wignats and everything just come after him. And ratioed. I think you were like on stream with him when they were just sort of like all bombarding.
They do that it's about once every 3 weeks they come onto the history stream, and they do their stuff. But you know, we've made enough moderators there to deal with it, you know, so it only lasts for about 5 minutes at a time, and we can cope with that. But one of the things to talk about is when the Groypers, you know, as I said, the unpopular opinions crowd and the deep law, as it was, differed on a number of things, but we generally held together. And then the Groyper phenomena happened. And I think some of the unpopular opinions crowd felt the Groyper playbook was the one to copy, and we must now punch the weaklings on the right. And that's when things started falling apart.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I've spoken to somebody. I like Turnip Merchant and such. He's been on my channel quite often, and he probably, I think he probably, I know he watches my streams as well. Like he'll probably watching this one as well. I'll make a comment later, but the American politics, American right, American politics is like it is brutal. It's more brutal than the British one, because well, there's been several reasons because it is a republic, and republics are more uncivilized than
Definitely.
constitutional monarchies.
Definitely.
I mean, to be honest, just one final point. Anyone who advocates for a republic, just look what's happening in America at the moment. Like all this bullshit votes, all these bullshit judges who are politically appointed. This is what you get in this country. When you want the Lords to become a Senate, that's what you get in this country. When you want President Keir Starmer or President Boris Johnson, that's what you get in this country. It's a terrible idea.
It is.
One of the worst. It's one of the most useless and inconsequential ideas to ever walk the earth at this moment in time in current day British politics. The idea to become a republic.
If you have a look, I mean, and you can look at the UN, and the UN is no friend of of anything that we kind of believe in, but they compile an index and they look at the corruption index, the corruption levels of countries, and they look at the happiness index of countries, and the constitutional monarchies of the world get into the top 10 of, or the top 20 of least corruptible and happiest. And you just look, and for all their faults, you're Britain, Belgium, Holland, Denmark, Norway, Sweden. I said they've all got their problems, but somehow the monarchies kind of keep it all together. And you just look at France and you look at America, and sometimes Italy, and then Germany, which just is on this drive to homogenize all political parties into one. And you just think, what a mess. What an absolute mess.
Well, see, on that note, we'll leave it with that. So,
yes.
I mean, we determined that republics are useless. Unfortunately, I think the problem with tonight was there was so much news coming out of America where
exactly.
I was going to talk about, like, literally yesterday, I was going to say, right, we'll talk about dissident right, and then we'll talk about America, and I was going to go, yeah, it's not looking good for Trump. I was going to say, like, pretty much, it's probably over. It's probably, like, if I was to guess, I'll say, like, I'm 40% sure that it's not going to work out.
And then
state legislation and everything. Apparently, there's more stuff coming out from Wisconsin, Georgia. Powell has now filed the lawsuit down there.
It looks like Pennsylvania, the allegations of voter fraud is holding. So that's
because the Republican, the right, the conservative, and the GOP members have basically said, they've gone to the state legislators and they've said to them, look at this. Look at the level of voter fraud. And it's been very clever because Rudy Giuliani's basically just been saying, if it can happen on the presidential level, your seats aren't safe. Your seats aren't safe. None of your seats and positions are safe. They could just rig the vote to get you out of office. At any like midterm election, any special election, and you're gone. And so I was watching it, and some of the faces on some of the Republicans, especially the ones that I thought on the board, who would be like, stab Trump in the back types, they were quite visibly shook and horrified. And this is why I always think that a lot of them don't know what's going on. And when it's presented to them in this way of like mass voter fraud, and then like people, like this elderly woman saying that she was her ballot was printed out on this printer at the state polling station, and Donald Trump's name was missing from it. And then she said this young man came over and said, "Oh no, it's to keep your privacy. You just scan it through the machine." And then you had like Delaware County, where one guy said, that was like with the dead people voting. And then you had like the big thing that angered them was the fact that poll watchers weren't allowed into the count. And I can tell you what, I've done poll watching. I've done a bit of poll watching here in the UK. And I know people who've done poll watching. If there was ever an instance where Conservative Party poll watchers were not allowed into account, and Labour were, there would be a riot in this country. Or there'd be a riot there anyway.
It was so naive of the those GOP staffers, when they were said, "Oh, take a break. This is going to take a while. Go and get something to eat. Have a rest. Come back." And then they should have looked over and said, "Well, the Democrat poll watchers leaving as well." And in elections, I don't move until my opposite number moves.
The thing is, there were some counties where that shenanigans went on, which never had voted for. The Republicans in Atlanta and in Wayne County and a few others, the reason why they were the first ones to declare to point out voter fraud is because they're used to it. They know the score, they know the game, they know the BS, and they were able to point it out. But there were a lot of these Republicans, they're like middle-aged pensioner types who never had to deal with something like this, and they were stumped. But they knew there was something was wrong, but they just couldn't articulate it because because you'd have to say the electoral system where you live, where you brought up, or you grown up, you worked under, had effectively been Mugabeized. But that was some. But see, that's what's been taken over, and it's been a nice surprise, I think. It'd be interesting how the media would spin it tomorrow.
Yeah, and Nevada as well. That happened. That's being
that Nevada. I was not expecting that. That one is a surprise. I'm not expecting Nevada to anything to happen there. Definitely not.
So we shall see. But as you're right. I mean, America took up a lot tonight, and then we were discussing again, problems within the conservative movement. But we need to have a look at, as I said, the last 2 weeks we've really fragmented into different groups, and I would like us to come back together, as an alliance, that we can come together on certain issues and go, that is something we can all work towards. And if we do work together, like Brexit, we can get it done. So let's find some things we can rally around.
And I've had to defend you in like some circles, like those. I won't name a few names, but
I think I know who they are.
Yeah. just to be clear, do you think Biden won fair and square?
No, I don't think he won fair and square.
Okay, there you go. Everyone, there you go. He's not cucking. He isn't Kate Andrews double act. He isn't giving in. There you go.
My position, and I made this clear, and this is why I blocked Powell's Ghost, because he misrepresented me on this one. And I said, look, there are shenanigans. They should be investigated. It's not over yet, and I'm not going to call him President-elect Biden, but I'm planning the contingency for if it goes wrong. And and don't call me a cunt, because I am thinking ahead one step, because that's something I did in my job for 20 years. I had to sit down and work out what all the potential hazards that we were going to encounter when we were on location somewhere. What are the hazards? And that's what I do. I plan contingencies.
I've thought ahead with it as well, and my thought ahead of it is, if Biden becomes president, there are going to be violence, and I don't know how he's going to sort it, and I don't know if he will be able to. And I think it'll be 4 years of anarchy.
Yes.
To be honest, I don't see, and I don't know how he can. I mean, I think the global agenda he won't be able to do, because no. I mean, could you imagine if there was an election in now like a third world country, and America would want to go in as like moderators? Like every like African tin pot dictatorship would just laugh at them and think, well, sort your own elections out, bud, and they'd be right to do so.
Yeah, I mean, this is, as I said, my position, what I said at the start of the stream was that we just got to have better weapons, better ammunition, and if you're going into court, some of the, there was that thing, I think it was day before yesterday, or it may have been even today, but somebody put out a video saying, look, there's voter fraud because all these postal ballots are being dumped into a truck. And then somebody said, how do I know that? That could be just rubbish men taking the rubbish away. And you go, you cannot trust everything, even though it sounds juicy and you want to believe it, it's got to pass a smell test. It's got to pass various thresholds before you can say, okay, that is what I'm going to stake my opinion on. You cannot just say, look, here's a dumper truck taking away a load of rubbish, and just because somebody says it's ballots doesn't mean.
I've ignored that. The ones that I do take, with great, I guess, interest in, is number one, them, like, this video out there, it's undisputed, and I don't care how many fucking fact checkers or BBC hacks or anybody tell me otherwise. There is plenty of video evidence out there to show that Republicans were not allowed into counting areas. There's actually an entire live stream out there of like a couple of hours where they're just prevented from going in. They have to go get a court order. Even with the court order, they're not allowed in. And it's like by these I guess Democrat operatives who prevent them from coming in, and they actually have to get the police. By the time they get in there, it's already too late, because they go and they get corralled into this area, and it's like several feet away is the actual counting, and they're just like enclosed in this case, and they just have to, and they can't see what's going on. And yet the Democrat ones are able to walk freely around and everything, and it's like, that is, I mean, for me, that should cancel the entire election. If that happened in the UK, that would cancel an election quite easily. I think it would.
But we're on a smaller scale, so every anomaly kind of stands out a lot more. I think with America, if those GOP vote checkers are prepared to go to court, it's strong. If they're prepared to testify, and they've got to, I'd say if there's anybody out there who witnessed that firsthand, you're a GOP vote checker,
go to your local congressman, go to
and say, I will testify.
And also, it may be worth reporting it to the police as well. If you've actually got evidence of criminal activity, like hard evidence, just go to the police wherever you are in the United States. If your local police department you can't go there for whatever reason, because it's like you're in an area which it's not possible, contact Rudy Giuliani's team, contact them directly, because I know there's been like some people who are like, there's what Rudy Giuliani's got one affidavit from a Democrat, but quite a senior Democrat, but he won't come forward because he's had a lot of death threats already. They've been trying to dox him and everything, so it's pretty nasty over there with the death threats and everything. But one thing, because I really got to go now, but one final thing before we go, there's been a Washington Examiner article which headline reads, "Huge court win lets Trump present ballot evidence, could overturn Nevada result." So that's just come in. So the Washington Examiner has actually looked at it, and they think that Trump could actually get Nevada. So I think the next 12 hours is going to be crucial for Trump. That's my prediction. I think by Friday we'll know which way it's going to go.
Yes.
But apart from that, thanks, Rhubba, for coming on.
Oh, no, thank you for inviting me. And there's plenty more to sink our teeth into.
Next, I think, sorry we didn't get to discuss everything we wanted to, but I'm going to try and organise a better panel, more people to come on to sort of debate, because I think if we have more people on, it'll be like it'd probably be better because the better flow of conversation and everything, more views and everything, and the different perspectives. But as I said, thank you very much, and I'll see you all next time next week. We'll sort of continue with the Blob Watch. Obviously, the Monolith Watch was a one-off special for the Monolith. I don't know. I might call it the Monolith Watch now. I'll do a poll, see which one's better.
Yeah, the Monolith is like it's a here and now moment, and then a few weeks later, people struggle to remember what the reference.
Yeah, references. Yeah, so maybe I'll just go back to the Blob Watch, go back to tradition. But we'll see how it goes. But thank you everyone for tuning in, and I'll see you all later.
Yep. Cheers. See ya.